Chapter 1. Jingshan District was the smallest district and county in Jing City. The area here was much smaller than other urban areas. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was the time when all schools were dismissed. Two people were standing in a dark corner not far from the entrance of Jingshan Vocational School. "Boss, will that kid really show up today?" The one who spoke was a fatty. He looked to be 16 or 17 years old and was about 1.7 meters tall. When people saw him, it was easy to associate him with the saying that he was 8 feet tall, and his waist circumference was also 8 feet. This was because his overall body shape was indeed like a globe. Next to Fatso was a young man who looked a few years older than him. The young man was about 1.8 meters tall. In sharp contrast to Fatso, he was a little thin. Perhaps it was because Fatso was standing next to him. His appearance could not be said to be handsome, but his pair of slender eyes were showing a sinister light. If any of his facial features were taken out and looked at separately, it would make people feel that he was a failure. But when put together, there was a special kind of harmony. He was the kind of person who was very pleasing to look at. Definitely, that kid will definitely come to pick her up today. She should be out of school soon. Damn it, if I don't get revenge today, Chiyu, will write my name backwards. Field Mouse, just wait and see what I mean. Vol nodded hard, but there was some worry in his eyes. "Boss, I heard that the kid is a martial artist. He has been practicing for 7 or 8 years. Do you think the two of us can handle him?" Chiyu patted the school bag on his body and said, "What are you afraid of? Don't forget, your boss, came with a magic weapon." Fatso smiled and also patted his school bag. He said, "Boss, it's a little weird to see you carrying a school bag. This thing doesn't seem to fit you." Chiyu glared at Vol and said, "Don't talk nonsense. No matter what, your boss graduated from junior high school. Although I didn't graduate from high school, I have been working for 2 years. Get ready." At this moment, a girl was slowly walking out of Jingshan Vocational School. She had a delicate face and a voluptuous body that was somewhat charming and alluring. She was not wearing an ordinary school uniform, but a short skirt that did not reach her knees and a bright yellow half-sleeve top. As she moved her eyebrows, she exuded a coquettish aura that did not match her age. Unlike the other students who directly left the school, she walked to the school gate and looked around as if she was looking for something. A swift figure ran towards the entrance of Jingshan Vocational School at an even speed. As he ran, he shouted, "Nana, I'm here." The newcomer was a young man around 18 or 19 years old. He was about 1.8 meters tall and had a well-proportioned physique. He wore sportswear which made him look valiant and formidable. His shoulder-length black hair was neatly combed. Because he had run here, his hair fluttered slightly in the breeze. He was handsome, but his eyes seemed to be flickering, and there was a hint of a mischievous smile on his face. "I just came out to." The girl named Nana greeted the handsome young man with a sweet smile on her face. The handsome young man held Nana's hand and chuckled. "Nana, I missed you so much. What are we going to do later?" Nana did not seem to notice the gazes of the students as she smiled. "Anything. If not, we'll go to your house." "Sure." The handsome young man's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of passion as the smile on the corner of his mouth turned lewd. "What a pair of adulterers." A cold voice came from the corner as Chiyu and Fatso Vol came out with sneers. They were obviously waiting for this young couple. When Nana saw Chiyu, a trace of panic flashed on her face, and she quickly hid behind the handsome young man. "Damn it, why are you hiding?" "Don't worry, I don't hit women. I just want to cripple this kid," Chiyu said viciously. The handsome young man snorted disdainfully and said, "Nana, don't be afraid. I'm here. Look at him. I can deal with him even if there are 10 of him." Chiyu stopped 5 meters away from the handsome young man. Vol put his hands on his waist and shouted, "Yin Xiaoi, you idiot! How dare you steal my boss's woman? We'll teach you a lesson today." "Just the two of you?" Yin Xiaoi's expression became even more disdainful. He lifted his right leg and beautifully kicked the air. His movement was very straightforward. Coupled with his handsome appearance and long black hair, he looked indescribably suave. However, his eyes were full of disdain. Nana, who was hiding behind him, did not seem to be that afraid anymore. She glared at Chi Yu and said, "I have nothing to do with you. Don't come looking for me again. I'm Xiaoyi's man now." Chi Yu snorted coldly. He opened his school bag and put his hand in it. Fatso and Vol did the same thing. Yin Xiaoyi's expression changed obviously, but he could not be weak in front of his girlfriend. "Come if you want to fight. Let me tell you, my dad is in the city's public security bureau. Delinquents like you should have been punished a long time ago." The expression on Chi Yu's face became sinister. He had been an orphan since he was young. He grew up in an orphanage under the care of social welfare. There was no one to discipline him. As he grew older, the rebellious feeling in his heart grew stronger. Although the Yinhuang Republic implemented 12 years of compulsory education and high school was free, he still dropped out of high school before he could graduate. In the words of ordinary people, a loafer like him who only knew how to fight, drink, and smoke could totally be called a hooligan. This girl named Nana had been dating him for more than a year. Although Chi Yu did not come from a good family background, he valued his first love very much. However, after Nana started relying on him, a hooligan, and found someone like Yin Xiaoyi who could fight and had a backer, she immediately kicked Chi Yu away. Chi Yu was indignant. Today, he specially came to the entrance of Nana's school to settle the score with Yin Xiaoyi. "I heard that you know martial arts." Chi Yu looked at Yin Xiaoyi from the corner of his eyes. Yin Xiaoyi said proudly, "Yes, I learned it for a few years. My master is the famous Northern Leg King." "Why? Do you want to try my leg skills?" "Fighting with a hooligan like you is simply dirtying my shoes." Chi Yu pulled out his hand from his bag and sneered. "I don't know if you've heard of this saying. It's called the brick-breaking martial art. Today, I'll let you know why flowers are so red." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly rushed forward. His speed was so fast that even Yin Xiaoyi, who had practiced martial arts, could not help but be shocked. At that moment, Chi Yu was holding a huge brick in his hand. This was naturally the secret weapon in his bag. After all, Yin Xiaoyi had practiced martial arts. Seeing Chi Yu rushing towards him with a brick, he did not panic. After all, a brick was not as threatening to him as a machete. However, as a person without a job in society, Chi Yu's fighting experience was far beyond that of Yin Xiaoyi. As soon as he rushed forward, the brick in his hand immediately flew out and was thrown directly at Yin Xiaoyi's head. Yin Xiaoyi, who was originally prepared, suddenly panicked. He originally planned to wait for Chi Yu to rush into his attack range and then give him a whip kick. He did not expect Chi Yu to use this method. He hurriedly used his arm to block. Although he had practiced martial arts, he was far from the level of copper skin and iron bones. The strength of Chi Yu's brick was not small. Yin Xiaoyi cried out in pain. His arm had been smashed. At that moment, Chi Yu just rushed in front of him. He caught the brick that was smashed on Yin Xiaoyi's arm and swung it in a circle. Vol's movement was obviously a bit slower than his boss. He also rushed up with a big brick in his hand and shouted. Confucius said, "Fight with a brick. Look at your face, don't mess around." Since that's the case, how can you fight alone? Fight with friends. Fight with all your strength. Isn't it a joy? Fight with no more. Fight with death. Fight with death. If Confucius was still alive, how would he react when he heard this? Chi Yu's movement was much faster than Yin Xiaoyi's imagination. When the brick he swung in a circle broke on Yin Xiaoyi's head, Yin Xiaoyi finally understood why the flowers were so red. His body softened, and before he could use his north kick skill, he was smashed to the ground by Chi Yu's brick. Blood flowed down from his head. Vol shouted and rushed forward. Although his movement was a bit slow, his brick was not hesitant. It hit Yin Xiaoyi's body. Chi Yu's brick was broken, but he still had his fists. How could he let go of such an opportunity to vent his anger? The fat man and the thin man brandished their fists and bricks that rained down like raindrops, causing Yin Xiaoyi to scream miserably. Fortunately, he still knew to curl up his body and cover his head with his hands. Although Yin Xiaoyi was knocked down by Chi Yu's hooligan moves, it had to be said that Chi Yu's fighting experience was much richer than his. Nana was obviously shocked by the scene in front of her. Just then, a girl who was walking out of the school screamed, "Murder!" Chi Yu and Vol were enjoying themselves when they suddenly heard the high-octave scream. Both of them were startled, and the feeling of their blood boiling suddenly decreased a lot. When they looked at Yin Xiaoyi again, they saw that his head was bleeding, and his branded sportswear had been dyed a strange color by the dust and blood on the ground. Although his body was still twitching, he could not fight back at all. Thinking of the word murder, Qiyu and Vol could not help but look at each other and stop what they were doing at the same time. Although hooligans like them were used to doing whatever they wanted outside, they did not dare to think about killing people. "Boss, what should we do? Is this guy really dead?" Vol's pair of small eyes could not help but show a trace of panic. "What should we do? What's done is done. I'll take care of it alone." Qiyu was very experienced in fighting. This was the school gate, and he was afraid that the school's security would arrive soon. Without any hesitation, he pulled off Yin Xiaoyi's pants and wrapped them around his head. It was early summer, and Yin Xiaoyi only wore a pair of underwear. Looking at the meat on his lower body, Qiyu kicked it hard, causing Yin Xiaoyi's body to tremble violently. "Let's go." After glaring fiercely at Nana's plump breasts, he and Vol immediately ran away in defeat. Qiyu never thought of reconciling with Nana. This woman had let him see her true colors. Just like a bus, if one got off, why would he want the woman next to him? Today, looking for Yin Xiaoyi was just to vent his anger. However, as he thought about it, he also missed the mysterious parts of Nana's body. As a hooligan, at least in terms of fantasy and theoretical experience, Qiyu still had some potential. Qiyu and Vol ran very fast. In a short time, the two ran out of the vicinity of the school and stopped in a secluded corner. Qiyu's face relaxed a lot, but also a little blank. Although he had vented his anger, he did not feel very happy. Instead, his heart was faintly aching. After all, Nana was his first love. Although there was no substantial relationship between the two, in Qiyu's heart, the beauty of first love had been completely destroyed. "Boss, did we hit too hard just now? I didn't expect that kid to be so useless. He was beaten down in just a few hits, and he didn't even have the strength to fight back. So lame." Qiyu snorted and said, "Vol, you have to remember, breaking bricks is an unchangeable truth. As long as we can catch him unprepared, that Bulsh asterisk T Northern Leg King is just Bulsh asterisk T." Vol said, "Boss, I've always wanted to ask you, why don't we use machetes? Machetes are so cool and powerful." Qiyu said proudly, "You don't need to use machetes. Machetes are controlled weapons, but bricks are different. Even if you get caught, it's much lighter. Also, bricks can be used locally, so it's more convenient to use. Fatso, this is experience. Okay, you go home. Your boss is going to run. I think that Yin Xiaoyi is going to lose a layer of skin, even if he doesn't die. I've asked around, and his father is indeed from the city bureau. If I don't run now, I'm afraid I won't have a chance. You are different. As long as you go home, you'll be fine." Vol's family background was very different from Qiyu's. He wasn't an orphan. On the contrary, he had a powerful father. Even Vol didn't know how rich his father was. The reason why he hung around with Qiyu was because he wasn't interested in studying. Although he spent money to attend a famous high school, he was still playing truant to hang out with Qiyu every day. He and Qiyu met by chance. Qiyu fully demonstrated his king's aura in a fight. He single-handedly beat up 3 hooligans from another street, and Vol happened to see it. From then on, Vol recognized him as his boss. "Boss, where are you going?" Vol asked with some apprehension. Qiyu patted his broad shoulder. "Don't worry, your boss has experienced this kind of thing a lot. Although this time it's a little big, it's not a big problem to run. It's just that this time I may have to run a little farther, and I can't return to the capital in a short time. You should go to school for a few days. With such good conditions, it would be a pity if you don't go. To be honest, I also envy those who have wisdom. Unfortunately, even if I study hard in high school, I can't go to college after the age of 18. Who asked me to be poor? Boss, this is for you." As he spoke, Fatso Vol took out a brand new mobile phone from his bag and handed it to Qiyu. "I just got this from my mother. Take it. I can contact you easily. Oh, by the way, boss, this card is also for you." As he spoke, he took out a dragon card from China Construction Bank and handed it to Qiyu. "I'm almost 16 years old. My father asked someone to get me an ID card in advance, and then he got this card. There's 20,000 yuan in it, and the password is my birthday. Boss, you can use it first. If it's not enough, You can call me, and I'll find a way to transfer money to you. Chiyu looked at Vol blankly. What are you doing? His face suddenly flushed, and he resisted the warmth in his eyes. He stuffed the mobile phone and card back to Vol. I can't take it. Today's incident was caused by me. How can I take your things? Don't worry, your boss is very strong. He won't die. Vol refused to take it no matter what. He stubbornly said, No, boss, you must take this. Oh, by the way, I heard from my father that the Qinghai-Tibet Railway is open. It is said that the scenery in Tibet is very good, and it is far from the capital. Why don't you go there and hide? In this way, you can take it as a vacation. 20,000 yuan should be enough for a month. I'll go back and beg my father. As soon as things are settled, I'll call you. Boss, if you want to go, hurry up. I'm leaving first. As he spoke, he didn't wait for Chiyu to shove the things back to him. He turned around and ran away. Chiyu chased after him for 2 steps and finally stopped. After all, the 20,000 yuan was too important to him. Because of his bad behavior, the orphanage had already kicked him out. Now, he could only rely on the monthly social assistance to barely rent a basement. Not to mention his savings, the small amount of social assistance was even a problem for him to eat. When he hit Yin Xiaoyi's head with the brick just now, he clearly heard the sound of bones breaking. He was afraid that the injury was serious. If he really died at the age of 19, he was no longer protected by the juvenile protection law. At the thought of death, Chiyu couldn't help but feel a deep fear. He sighed in his heart. Poor me, I'm still a virgin. Looking at the Vol's figure, although it was running, it wasn't fast. Chiyu felt something in his heart. He muttered to himself, Good brother, I'm borrowing this from you. If I can repay you, I will repay you 1,000 times. As he thought about it, he took out a cheap cigarette from his pocket and put it in his mouth. However, when he was about to light it, he found that he had lost his lighter. The capital was located in the north of the Yanhuang Republic. The north in May was already very warm. When night fell, the capital became obviously more gorgeous. All kinds of neon lights were constantly flashing on the streets. Some jobs that only existed at night had just begun to work. When the watch pointed to 9:30, Chiyu, who had boarded the T-27 train, finally breathed a sigh of relief. Before he got on the train, he had been in a perturbed mood. If he didn't succeed in running away and was caught, he was afraid that he would be finished. After getting on the train, Chiyu's mood was relatively relaxed. For him, he had only heard of the word Tibet. It was a mysterious place. He only knew that there was a mysterious existence called Patala Palace there. Chiyu wanted to buy a hard seat, but when he bought the ticket, he found that there were no seats on the T-27 train to Tibet. After asking carefully, he found out that Tibet was located on a plateau, which was easy to cause altitude sickness. In order to get there smoothly and reduce accidents, all the trains had sleeper berths, divided into hard berths and soft berths. Chiyu hesitated for a long time and finally bought a hard berth ticket that cost more than 800 yuan and boarded the train. Before coming to the railway station, he withdrew all 20,000 yuan from the car that Vol had given him. For him, this was definitely the greatest wealth in his life. After entering the carriage, Chiyu's nervousness because of the fight suddenly disappeared. The carriage was decorated with a warm yellow color. It was covered with a thick carpet, and it was soft to step on. The overhead lights seemed to be the kind of energy-saving lights, which were very bright. However, he didn't know how luxurious this train was. After all, this was the first time he had taken a train, and it was also the first time he had left the capital. He simply picked up a train brochure and flipped through it. According to the brochure, this T-27 train would take 48 hours to reach Tibet. For this trip to the snowy plateau, Chiyu still had a lot of expectations. The simplest one was that he hoped to encounter some erotic experiences on the train. He had read a lot of pornographic novels, and he had long been looking forward to some of the things that happened on the train. The hard sleeper compartment was for 4 people. Because Chiyu was worried about being caught, he was the first to climb on the train and find a seat. While looking at the novel things on the train, he was looking forward to how many beautiful women would share a room with him. Even if there was only one, this 48-hour journey would not be lonely. The number of people on the train gradually increased, and it became noisy. As the excitement and expectation in his heart rose at the same time, Chiyu couldn't bear to read the magazine in his hand anymore. He stuck his head out from his upper berth to observe the women who could arouse his interest. Chiyu's eyes were very hot, and the range was also very wide. As long as there were some beautiful and young women, he would look at them from bottom to top. Yes, from bottom to top. This was already Chiyu's habit. He had always thought that, as an experienced pervert, he naturally had to look at women from their figures. How could he feel good without a good figure? Although a beautiful face was important, the figure was obviously more important. While Chiyu swallowed his saliva, he also received a lot of supercilious looks. However, obscene looks obviously could not constitute criminal evidence. Although he received a lot of supercilious looks, Chiyu still enjoyed watching. At this moment, a white figure attracted Chiyu's attention. It was a girl so beautiful that it was suffocating. She wore a pair of white branded sports shoes, revealing a pair of slender, fair, and beautiful legs. Of course, only her knees were exposed, and the area that Chiyu coveted was covered very well by a white short skirt. She wore a white shirt with a large collar. Her plain white attire did not only attract Chiyu's attention. After all, this 17 or 18-year-old girl not only had a well-proportioned figure, but also a beautiful angelic face. Her lovable face seemed to carry a bit of innocence. F***CK, a devil's body and an angel's face. If she was with me, I would be willing to live 10 years less. No, it's better to live 1 year less. Perhaps 10 years would allow me to enjoy more beautiful women. As Chiyu thought about it, his eyes stayed on the girl. Soon, the girl walked in his direction. Chiyu's heart couldn't help but beat faster and faster. He took a deep breath, afraid that his saliva would not listen to him and drip out. What made Chiyu most excited was that this girl in white seemed to be alone and had no other companions. The girl in white finally arrived in front of the room where Chiyu was. Her footsteps paused for a moment, and her eyes happened to meet Chiyu's eyes. Although Chiyu never had any restrictions on his behavior, when he saw the girl in white's innocent eyes, his heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. He subconsciously used his usual tone and said, "Beauty, are you also in this room?" The girl in white looked at Chiyu's naked eyes and seemed to be a little curious. She smiled slightly and nodded to Chiyu, saying, "Hello, uncle. Are your eyes sick? I have eye drops here." If it was painful for a self-proclaimed handsome man to be abandoned by the woman he admired, then the pain Chiyu was experiencing now was twice as painful. After all, if he had been rejected before he even reached the door when he was preparing to have sex, it would not be as blissful as being abandoned after loitering around for a while. Hearing the word uncle, Chiyu's jaw almost dropped. My eyes are fine. Am I that old?" As he spoke, Chiyu jumped down from his bed and subconsciously touched his face. Indeed, it had been at least a week since he last bathed. For a lazy person like him, shaving was already not a simple matter. Coupled with the whitening of his jeans, he gave off a feeling of vicissitudes. Chiyu deliberately combed his hair with a 5-fingered steel fork and handed his face to the girl in white. The girl in white blushed and looked at Chiyu, who was half a head taller than her. She said shyly, "I'm sorry, I couldn't see clearly from below. But if your eyes are always so big, they will easily dry up. I'm a medical student." Master, she was definitely a master. She could actually be immune to the eyes of a pervert. Chiyu was very happy in his heart. Meeting such an innocent girl, if he didn't become a pervert, it would be a big loss. "Hey, do you have altitude sickness?" "That's not right. We haven't left the capital yet." The girl in white looked at Chiyu in surprise. "What? Me? No. How can I have altitude sickness? I am very strong." As he spoke, Chiyu hurriedly gestured at his arm to the girl in white. Of course, the obvious muscles naturally could not be seen. The girl in white covered her mouth and chuckled. She said, "Then why are you drooling?" "Oh yes, can I trouble the strong uncle? No, big brother, to help me put my luggage up. I don't have enough strength." Only then did Chiyu realize that his saliva had dripped down without him paying attention to it. He answered in a panic and hurriedly helped the girl in white put her luggage on the luggage rack. The girl in white tidied up her clothes and carefully stepped onto the upper bunk. It turned out that she was the same as Chiyu. This time, Chiyu was even more excited. He could completely see every part of the girl's body at eye level. Of course, it was separated by clothes. Looking at the 1-meter gap between the two beds, Chiyu couldn't help but secretly sigh in his heart. It was really so close yet worlds apart. If this was a big bed, how perfect would it be? As he thought about it, he raised his head to look. Wow, it's also white inside. And this last is obviously the pure and innocent type of girl. Who knows how many times stronger than Nana. This time, I definitely can't let her go. Oh heavens, I'm seriously begging you. Let my virginity come to an end. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Chiyu hurriedly rubbed his nose as he thought about that moment of pleasure. He was afraid of making a fool of himself again. The girl in white leaned against her quilt and looked curiously at the absent-minded Chiyu. She said generously, "I'm called Shueiyu. What about you?" Chiyu suddenly came to his senses and hurriedly climbed back into his bed. He tried his best to put on a confident look and said, "My name is Chiyu. We really are fated. Look, both of our names have the character Yu." Shueiyu smiled slightly and said, "What are you doing in Lhasa? Traveling? Let me guess what your occupation is. I think with your dressing, you should be walking the popular decadent route. You should be an artist." Yes, I'm an artist." When he first heard the word artist, Chiyu's mouth opened so wide that an egg could be stuffed in. However, the nature of a hooligan made him immediately react and hurriedly continue. After all, after wandering in society for a few years, he hadn't learned anything else, but the thickness of his skin had increased day by day. Shueiyu seemed a little excited. "Really? My guess is very accurate. Then, what kind of art do you do? Can you tell me? I didn't expect that I could meet an artist on this trip to Tibet. It's really my honor." Chapter 2. This time, it was Shueiyu's turn to cover her cherry mouth in surprise. "Body art? Are you talking about the kind that has to be stripped naked? No wonder your eyes are so strange." Chiyu was extremely proud of his quick-wittedness. He chuckled and said, "Actually, body art is a very profound art. As an artist who studies body art, I always believe that the human body is the most perfect art in the world, especially a woman's body. Not only is it full of mystery, but it also has a hazy sense of beauty. Only by untying all the restraints can the beauty be completely released. How about it? If there is a chance, let's discuss it in detail." After saying this, even he admired himself more and more. The knowledge in his stomach was really limited. This was definitely an extraordinary performance. Shueiyu thought as she nodded gently and said, "What you said seems to make sense. However, I don't know much about body art." Chiyu hurriedly said seriously, "It doesn't matter. Although I'm not old, I can definitely be your teacher in this aspect. If there's a chance, we must discuss it. Maybe we will have such a chance when we go to Tibet." As he spoke, his gaze had already fallen on Shueiyu's full chest. Because she was wearing a large collar shirt, the roundness above was already faintly visible. This time, Shueiyu was no longer ignorant. Feeling Chiyu's strange gaze, she blushed and hurriedly pulled up her clothes. She said, No need. If my father knew, he would be angry. It's better if I don't understand body art." "That's a pity. I'm sorry. I actually didn't want to see that part of you. However, as a body artist, it's a professional habit. This is just a professional habit. Please don't mind. What about you? What are you doing in Tibet?" It was not easy for him to become familiar with her. Chiyu did not want to miss the opportunity, so he quickly changed the topic. Shueiyu seemed to believe Chiyu's explanation. She said, "I am a freshman at Beijing Medical University. My father is also a doctor. I have learned a lot from him since I was young. This time, my trip to Tibet was arranged by my father. He hoped that I would increase my training, so he let me intern in a hospital in Lhasa for a period of time. After the summer vacation, I will return to Beijing." "Oh, so you're an angel in white. Amazing. Chiyu hurriedly said a few words of flattery. Shueiyu seemed to be a little afraid of his unbridled gaze. She clearly did not speak much and pulled the blanket over her delicate body. It was already nighttime now. She closed her eyes. It was unknown whether she was really asleep or just pretending to be asleep. The two people on the lower bunk had already entered the carriage. Because Shuei had already been covered with a blanket, they naturally did not notice that there was already a beauty on top. The train from the capital to Lessa finally started. Through the window, Chiyu looked at the flowing neon lights and couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Looking at Shuyu's appearance, her family conditions must be very good. Otherwise, how could she raise such a good daughter? Did he really have a chance? I'm afraid it'll be very difficult. Thinking about Nana, who had kicked him away, Chiyu's lust did not decrease, but he was more or less dispirited. At this time, as the train started, the broadcast sounded. In the broadcast introduction, there were a total of 8 stations from Beijing to Lessa: Beijing, Shizhuang, Xianlanzhou, Xining, Galmud, Naku, and Lessa. The train ran very smoothly. Because it was already late, after an hour of noise, the train gradually quieted down. Most people had already begun to fall asleep. At this time, Chi was still awake. Because Shuei Yu's identity was not ordinary, and she had been sleeping the entire time, he did not have much of a chance. Thus, after the train had started moving, he had set his sights on the attendants who were about to appear. However, he was greatly disappointed. This time, not to mention using his eyes to take advantage of her, he did not even have the slightest chance. This was because all the service staff on this train were men. When he inquired about it, he found out that in order to prevent the train attendants from suffering from altitude sickness, all the service staff on the Qinghai-Tibet line were made up of soldiers who had retired from the plateau. They were all men with the best physical conditions. Looking at the energetic train attendants, Chiyu's last hope was shattered. His consciousness gradually became a little blurred. Listening to the even breathing next to him, Chiyu finally could not hold on anymore. His eyelids gradually became heavy. Recalling what he had experienced in the past 19 years, he gradually fell asleep. In his sleep, Chiyu felt as if he was flying. The ground was under his feet, and he was surrounded by hazy clouds. The feeling of flying between heaven and earth was so wonderful. He was surprised to find that he seemed to be unable to see his body. He could only see a faint red light. The red light that emitted a burning aura seemed to have changed his life. Gradually, the red light became more and more intense, and he found that his body was very comfortable. What's wrong with me? Am I really flying? Chi was full of doubts. Suddenly, the clouds in front of him parted. In the distance, he saw a large building shrouded in golden light. The shape of the building was unclear, but when he looked at it, it gave him a strong shock. The scale of the building was so majestic, and the most peculiar thing was that there was a peaceful voice that seemed to be calling out to him. Chi wanted to speed up and fly over, but he was a little scared to find that the golden building seemed to be getting farther and farther away from him. However, the peaceful voice became clearer. Come to me. Your companions need you." This was the only sentence that could be heard clearly, but Chiyu's heart was full of anxiety. The clouds appeared again, and everything around him became blurred again. The golden building complex disappeared, but the calling voice still remained in his mind. Why does this voice sound so comfortable? It doesn't seem to be a woman's voice. Could it be that I'm also interested in men? No, absolutely not. My sexual orientation has always been normal. Even in this dreamy scene, the filthy thoughts in Chiyu's mind still existed. He did not know why, but the moment this thought appeared, everything around him suddenly disappeared. The clouds were gone, and he no longer felt like he was flying. Everything was plunged into darkness. He's calling me. As he murmured, Chiyu suddenly woke up. You're finally awake." The sweet voice was filled with surprise. Chiyu gradually returned to his senses. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was that delicate and pretty face. Yes, he should be on the train, so everything just now was clearly a dream. Very quickly, Chiyu discovered that something was wrong. He was not on his original top bunk, but in another room. The low roar of the train was still ringing, and there was a faint smell of disinfectant around him. He couldn't help but ask, "Where am I?" Shuei let out a long breath and said, "You've finally woken up. I've never seen anyone who sleeps better than you." Chiyu scratched his slightly messy hair and said, "Did I sleep for a long time?" Shuei said unhappily, If it wasn't long, you wouldn't have come to the infirmary. You slept for over 30 hours. In a few hours, we'll reach Lhasa. If you hadn't woken up, I'm afraid the train attendants would have sent you to the hospital at the last stop before Lhasa. Fortunately, I'm a doctor. Your pulse is very stable, and there's nothing wrong with it. Over 30 hours. It was just a short dream, and so much time had passed. Chiyu couldn't help but feel it was strange. The memories in his mind flickered. He found that he remembered everything in the dream without missing a single thing. This was the first time this had happened. He had naturally had dreams in the past, but usually after waking up, he only had a vague impression. But this time was clearly different. Raising his head to look at Shuei, Chiyu couldn't help but smile. "So, you've been taking care of me all this time?" Shuei blushed slightly and said, "Don't forget, I'm a doctor. Do you have any discomfort?" The train is now more than 3,000 meters above sea level. Chiyu was stunned and took a deep breath. His body didn't seem to feel uncomfortable at all. He shook his head and said, "No, the smell here is really bad. I've been afraid of going to the hospital since I was young. Let's go back to the carriage." As he spoke, he immediately sat up on the bed. At this moment, Shuei happened to be sitting by his bed. As soon as Chiyu got up, he suddenly felt slightly dizzy. In addition, he had gotten up a bit too abruptly. His body slanted, and he immediately bumped into Shuei's body. If a person suddenly saw a piece of driftwood float in front of him when he was drowning, he would definitely grab it tightly. And Chiyu was in such a situation right now. His body slanted, and he instinctively went to support Shuei. His right hand just happened to grab Shuei's body. Only then was he able to stabilize his body. So soft, so big, and so bouncy. When Chiyu had just stabilized his body, three sensations instantly appeared in his mind. After calming himself down, he realized that his grab seemed to have inadvertently comprehended the legendary breast-grabbing dragon claw. Shuei's body clearly froze. With a light sound, he instinctively slapped a palm toward Chiyu's shoulder. The bouncy feeling on his hand just happened to fill his palm that he had always thought was very big. Chiyu instinctively squeezed again to confirm his real existence. Although he had dated Nan-Na for a period of time, Chiyu had always been the kind of person who had lustful thoughts but not the guts. It was the first time he had done such an intimate action. Shuei was shocked, but how could he not be shocked? A slender white hand landed on Chiyu's shoulder. Chiyu only felt a wave of heat instantly come from his shoulder. His body fell back onto the bed due to the irresistible force. Following Shuei's cry of surprise, because some parts of her body had been grabbed by Chiyu's unintentional roguish action, she just happened to fall onto his body. "You?" Shuei was just about to angrily scold him when she suddenly realized that something was wrong with Chiyu. At this time, Chiyu, who had just woken up, fell back into unconsciousness. His face became very red, and a faint wave of heat emanated from his body. Not good. Shuei finally remembered that in her embarrassment, she had actually used the sun-folding hand that had been passed down in her family. Although her skills were not very strong, and the sun-folding hand was not a very domineering technique, for someone like Chiyu who did not have any martial arts background, that palm just now was still too heavy. Chiyu's hand that had grabbed onto her breasts had already loosened on its own. His entire body emitted a high temperature that gradually rose in his unconsciousness. The sun-folding hand was a type of internal martial art. It was a secret technique of Shuei's family that was not passed down. It was mainly used to assist in healing. Of course, the sun-folding hand itself also had a very strong attack power and could also be used for self-defense. If it wasn't for the fact that she was the only daughter in this generation, she would not have been able to learn it. From a very young age, Shuei had already started cultivating. After more than 10 years, her internal martial arts had already reached a small level. When Chiyu had first seen her, he had found it very strange. Why would such a young and beautiful girl travel such a long distance to Tibet alone? However, he did not expect that this seemingly innocent young girl was already considered an expert. When Shuei saw Chiyu's appearance, she couldn't help but feel anxious. However, she had after all followed her father to learn Chinese medicine from a young age. Although she was shocked, she did not panic. She hurriedly took off Chi Yu's shirt. At this time, Shui Yu's strength was immediately shown. She very easily took off Chi Yu's blue shirt that had long since been covered in the smell of sweat. Chi Yu's skin was a healthy bronze color. There was no excess fat on his body. However, his muscles were not obvious and appeared somewhat thin. From Chi Yu's pulse, it was clear that he was slightly malnourished. At this time, his right shoulder had already become red and swollen. The bronze skin gradually emitted a faint layer of heat. Shuei took a deep breath. This was also the first time she had encountered someone who had been injured by her family's sun folding hand. She was very clear about the attack power of the sun folding hand. Although she had only used 30% of her strength in that attack, it was still enough to kill someone. When the sun folding hand was used to defend oneself, the most tyrannical part was the masculine energy within. Fortunately, Shuei Yu was a girl and naturally belonged to the Yin attribute. Her sun folding hand had a more feminine aura and it did not act up so quickly. Otherwise, that attack just now would only need an instant to take half of Chi Yu's life. Shuei Yu's body floated up as if she was weightless. She only touched the ground with one foot and arrived at the door. She first looked outside and then immediately locked the door. After all, a man and a woman were alone in a room, and at this time, she had taken off Chi Yu's shirt. She definitely did not want this scene to be seen by others. Returning to the bed, Shuei Yu's face instantly turned red because under Chi Yu's jeans that had already turned white, there was a large bulge. Without needing to ask, Shuei Yu knew what it was. After all, she was a student of medicine. She was not the little girl in Chi Yu's heart who did not know anything. Chi Yu's physiological reaction was not from the dragon claw that had grabbed at breasts, but the yang energy in his body had been stimulated by the sun folding hand. Suppressing the embarrassment in her heart, Shuei Yu took out a cloth bag from her body. When she opened the cloth bag, it was filled with all kinds of silver needles. She now needed to help channel the yang energy that had invaded Chi Yu's body to save his life. Picking up a medium-sized silver needle, Shuei Yu was just about to stab down when she suddenly saw a strange scene. On the left side of Chi Yu's chest, a faint pattern appeared. It was a beast head that looked like a deer, but wasn't a deer, like a horse, but wasn't a horse. The pattern was black, and a beautiful horn extended from Chi Yu's heart all the way to his collarbone. The beast head was slightly lowered, and, as the pattern became clearer, one could see that the horn on the beast head was in a fine spiral shape. The beast head was covered with silver-brown fur from head to neck. Paired with the black beast head, it looked exceptionally handsome. At the beginning, only the beast head appeared, but very quickly, the black body began to spread down. The entire body was completely black except for the head, neck, and a small portion of the forelimbs. The pattern continued to spread towards Chi Yu's back. What was this? Was this a tattoo? How could there be such a perfect tattoo? Driven by curiosity, Shuei Yu carefully flipped over Chi Yu's body. She was instantly stunned by everything in front of her. Most of Chi Yu's back had become black. It was completely the appearance of a strange beast. From head to tail, the back of the beast was covered with lifelike silver fur. The black and silver horn that was evenly intertwined looked even more handsome. There were 4 clumps of clouds under the black monster. However, these clouds gave off a dreamy feeling. Within the faint silver, there seemed to be some other colors. However, no matter how hard Shuei Yu tried, she was unable to clearly see what was contained within. The entire beast covered almost 2/3 of Chi Yu's back. Shuei Yu thought in shock, was this an invisible tattoo? Father had once said that after a tattoo was made with pigeon blood mixed with some herbs, it would not be seen normally. It would only appear when the blood was moving. However, pigeon blood did not seem to be able to tattoo black, and she had never heard of silver appearing in tattoos. How much pain and effort did one have to endure to successfully make such a fine and large area tattoo? While she was puzzled, Shuei Yu quickly understood. Originally, she did not really believe that Chi Yu claimed to study human body art. While she did not read many people, she was still somewhat wary. Therefore, after a simple conversation, she decided to ignore Chi Yu. The reason she was here to take care of Chi Yu was completely out of a doctor's instinct and not because she had any good feelings towards Chiyu. However, when she saw this strange tattoo and thought of what Chiyu had said, Shueyu could not help but blush with shame. She thought to herself that she had gauged the heart of a gentleman with her own mean measure. To be able to make such a perfect tattoo, it was likely that only people who studied human body art could do it. How would she know that the one who should truly blush with shame was Chiyu? Yes, the so-called human body art was naturally used to seduce a pure little girl like her. However, Chiyu, this big bad wolf, did not know until he fainted again that the prey that he had originally obtained was not so easy to touch. Even stranger things continue to happen. When Shueyu turned Chiyu's body over again and prepared to help him channel the damage caused by the sun-folding hand, she strangely saw that the silver and black monster's horns suddenly had an additional layer of faint red light. Its left front hoof and half of its body and head were in front of Chiyu. At this time, Chiyu's already swollen right shoulder was actually gradually reducing, and Chiyu's rapid breathing also gradually calmed down. Only his lower body was still high. The redness of his skin, due to the increase in temperature, also gradually decreased. Shueyu curiously placed her hand on Chiyu's wrist and carefully examined it. She found that the yang energy in Chiyu's body that had been secretly emitted by her sun-folding hand was gradually disappearing. No, more accurately speaking, it seemed that the yang energy emitted by the sun-folding hand was being absorbed by his body. This was the first time Shueyu had encountered such a situation. She did not discover that right now. Chiyu's body had already entered a special atmosphere. Although there was some pain on his face, his skin seemed to have become more elastic. His face was no longer as red as before, but a healthy red. The black monster symbols on his body were gradually disappearing, and his mind was gradually stabilizing. Every breath became abnormally even and did not even pause in between. It seemed that at some unknown time, he had already entered a strange world. However, all of these changes were very minute. Even if one deliberately observed it, it was likely that they would miss it. Shueyu let out a long breath. After all, she had never thought of harming Chiyu. It was just that the situation just now was too special. It was precisely because of this special situation that she developed a sense of self-protection and almost casually used the sun-folding hand. Seeing that Chiyu's body was no longer in any danger, Shueyu instead felt slightly lost because she did not know how to face Chiyu. Calming down, the place where Chiyu's strange hand had grabbed still felt somewhat soft. Her pretty face could not help but turn red again. Carefully putting away the silver needles in her hand, Shueyu sighed softly and stood up from the side of the bed. A trace of a bitter smile appeared on her face. Towards this man who had left a deep impression on her the first time she had met him, her heart was already in a mess. Smiling slightly, Shueyu knew that no matter what would happen between her and Chiyu in the future, at least this man's figure had already been deeply imprinted in her heart. He had actually grabbed that place of hers. Although it was not intentional, it was still embarrassing enough. If Shueyu had come to treat Chiyu, she would naturally be able to determine when Chiyu would wake up. However, with the appearance of this special situation, she could not be certain. Just as Shueyu did not know how to explain things to the train attendant, a faint moan had already come out of Chiyu's mouth. His body moved slightly. Chiyu's movement gave Shueyu a fright. At this time, Chiyu's upper body was still naked with a red face. Shueyu hurriedly helped Chiyu up and helped him put on his clothes. For a normal girl, the weight of Chiyu's body was naturally a great burden. However, for Shueyu, it was naturally nothing. Despite this, when the blue top that carried a strong smell of sweat was put on, it still caused her to be so nervous that she was covered in fine, fragrant sweat. Chiyu's feeling was very strange. When he had been hit by Shueyu's palm, he did not feel any pain. He only felt a wave of heat travel from his shoulder to his brain. His mind became dizzy, and he sank into unconsciousness. In his unconsciousness, the dream appeared once again. However, this time, he was not flying, and he did not see the large golden buildings. Instead, he was in the middle of a huge furnace. His surroundings were fiery red. The scalding flames constantly attacked his body from all directions. Heat was the only thing that Chi-Yu could feel. Every time it attacked, it would bring him pain that came from the depths of his soul. Chi wanted to cry out, but he could not make a sound. He was even more unable to escape this pain. Just as Chi-Yu was about to reach his limit, a faint coolness suddenly came from his heart. It rippled through every corner of his body like water. Wherever the coolness passed, he could immediately feel that the seemingly fatal heat was quickly fading. No, more accurately, it seemed to be fusing with his body. The heat and coolness seemed to be neutralizing. After neutralizing, it naturally produced a strange and wonderful feeling. It was precisely this neutralization process that caused the originally unbearable pain to weaken. At the same time, wherever the coolness passed, there was a hint of comfort, as if he was enjoying it. If Chi-Yu was still awake, then he would most likely moan out loud from the sudden bliss that appeared in this pain. When all the pain completely faded and his entire body was surrounded by a comfortable feeling, everything seemed to return to normal. The illusion in front of him disappeared, and the furnace that had just appeared also became an illusion. His consciousness awakened once again, and he could once again feel everything around him. Slowly opening his eyes, the sunlight that shone through the train window did not give Chi-Yu a piercing feeling. The sunlight seemed to have become gentle, and when it shone on his body, it was warm and indescribably comfortable. Everything around him also seemed to have become more natural. Chi-Yu looked with some confusion at Shuei-Yu, who was standing by the bed. What happened to me? Why did I suddenly faint just now? Shuei-Yu's pretty face blushed slightly. I don't know either. Perhaps it's because your body has not recovered and you are affected by altitude sickness. Chi-Yu scratched his head. Is that really the case? Just now, you seem to have pushed me, and I don't know anything. How did my body become so weak? Perhaps I really should start training. As he spoke, he slowly sat up from the bed and moved his body. He suddenly found that his body seemed to be much lighter than before. Whether it was raising his arm or every minute movement of his body, they all became abnormally natural and relaxed. This kind of special harmony was something Chi-Yu had never felt before. Shuei-Yu also had a special feeling. The Chi-Yu in front of her seemed to have undergone some slight changes. Although he still had the green beard on his face, and he still looked dispirited, his eyes seemed to be much brighter than before. Even his unremarkable features seemed more harmonious. Thinking of the strange tattoo that had appeared and then disappeared in Shuei-Yu's eyes, this young man who called himself a human artist seemed to have become somewhat mysterious. Okay, since you are fine, then I should go back. Shuei-Yu nodded at Chi-Yu. Calming her slightly chaotic emotions, she turned and walked out. Naturally, she would not ask Chi-Yu about the tattoo. She did not want this somewhat mysterious man to know that she had once taken off his clothes. Chi-Yu suddenly called out, "Wait, I'll go back with you. I am fine anyway." As he spoke, he also stood up from the bed. His right hand reached behind his back and grabbed a few times. There seemed to be some soft feeling left on his fingertips. Chi-Yu could not help feeling secretly pleased. He thought to himself, "It looks like I don't need to wash my hands for a while. I really do have a talent for lasciviousness. I can hit my target unintentionally." When the two of them returned to their berths, Chi-Yu was instantly stunned by everything in front of him. It was not what had happened inside the train, but the scenery outside. Through the window, he could see a stretch of snow-covered mountains. The snowy mountains reached into the clouds. The sky was a color he had never seen before. The sky that was like a bright sapphire did not have a trace of pollution. Although Chi-Yu had thought that Tibet was very beautiful, he had never realized that any place could be so beautiful. He had seen many clouds, but there was no place that could compare to the clouds here. Under the snowy mountains was a flat grassland. Yaks were gnawing on the grass on the ground. The majestic snowy mountains, the blue sky, the perfect clouds, and the grassland full of vitality. Even if he saw it with his own eyes, it seemed that all of this was fake. Chi-Yu's heart was filled with shock. If he had a camera in his hand, no matter how bad the camera was, he would definitely be able to take a postcard-like beautiful picture here. Dad said that these yaks are very powerful. Although they are good at surviving in high altitude and low oxygen areas, As long as the altitude is more than 5,000 meters, they will not climb any higher, even if you use a whip to drive them. Shueiyu's eyes carried a layer of blurred beauty as she appreciated the unique scenery of the snowy region. Her shock was no less than that of Qiyu. It's really hard to imagine. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never believe that all of this is true. Look at that day. It was as pure as a virgin. However, its purity seems to be permanent. Qiyu's words immediately caused Shueiyu to roll her eyes. Even the people in the lower berths could not help but look at him with a strange expression. Qiyu did not feel embarrassed at all. He said with a smile, "Don't forget, I am in the field of body art. Naturally, I have my own methods of evaluation." Shueiyu turned her head back somewhat helplessly and continued to look at the snowy region outside. The beauty here, even if she looked at it for a lifetime, she would not feel tired. Chapter 3. Shueiyu said, "That's a prayer banner. It's very common in Tibet. For example, on the roofs of houses, beside holy mountains and holy water, Buddha statues, and so on. The five-color prayer banner is composed of 5 colors: blue, white, red, green, and yellow. Their colors can't be changed at will because each color represents a different meaning. Blue sky, white clouds, and snow-capped mountains, red sun, also known as flames, green trees, and yellow earth. There are scriptures printed on the prayer banner. Tibetans believe that every time the wind blows the prayer banner, it means that they have recited the Buddhist scriptures in their hearts and prayed for peace and auspiciousness." Qiyu smiled and said, "Isn't this your first time here? You look very familiar." Shueiyu said, "I can't say I'm familiar, but my father has been here many times. He often tells me about Tibet and shows me some photos. For Tibet, the Potala Palace is their holy land. My father said that if you don't come to Tibet once, you'll never be able to appreciate how beautiful the scenery of our Yanhuang Republic is." "Oh, what's the Potala Palace like?" Qiyu naturally wouldn't be so ignorant that he didn't know about the Potala Palace, but at this time, he suddenly thought of the golden building in his dream. It seemed to be a strange building built on a mountain. Although he hadn't seen it clearly, the sacred feeling made Qiyu have some ideas. The Potala Palace is on Mount Maburi in the northwest of Lhasa, Tibet. It is a famous palace building complex and the essence of Tibetan ancient architecture. The Potala Palace was built in the 7th century AD. It was built by the Tibetan king Sonsen Gampo for Princess Wunsheng of the Tang dynasty, who was married to Tibet. A palace with 999 rooms was built on Red Mountain, which is more than 3,700 meters above sea level in Lhasa. The palace was built against the mountain. It now covers an area of 410,000 square meters and has a construction area of 130,000 square meters. The main building of the palace has 13 floors and is 115 meters high. It is all made of stone and wood. The 5 palace roofs are covered with gold-plated copper tiles. They are golden and majestic. It is the essence of Tibetan ancient architecture. After listening to Shuyue's detailed explanation, Qiyu's heart trembled slightly, especially the 4 words, which made him have a strong impulse. This time, although he had come to Tibet on the run, he had secretly decided that no matter what, he had to go to Potala Palace to take a look. The clarity of the dream gave him a feeling that was completely different from his previous life. Although it was just a dream, in his mind, the dream seemed to be real. Shueiyu looked back at Qiyu and said with a smile, "It's a pity that you slept for too long and didn't see the majestic Kunlun Mountains. It is also a very beautiful place. The highest peak in the eastern part of the Kunlun Mountains, Yuzhu Peak, is where our train passed. It is more than 6,000 meters above sea level. We have now arrived at the Nyingching Tangla Mountains. This is one of the most important mountains around Lhasa. You see, these snow-capped mountains don't seem to be very high, mainly because the altitude we are at is already very high. Nyingching Tangla means Lingyiang grassland god in Tibetan. It is the sacred mountain in the hearts of Tibetans. The main peak is 7,117 meters high. Near the main peak, there are 4 peaks over 7,000 meters above sea level, arranged east-west and closely connected. There are also more than 30 snow-capped peaks over 6,000 meters around it. They are majestic and endless. Here, we are almost in Lhasa. Her voice was said with a sigh. Looking at Shueiyue, it seemed that she had completely integrated into the snowy region outside the train. Chiyu didn't say anything more. Looking at the majestic snow-capped mountains outside, for some reason, he didn't have the mood to tease Shueiyue. The majesty of the snow-capped mountains was not only in appearance, but also in his heart. He suddenly felt that his heart was unprecedentedly open. The depressed feeling when he left the capital was gone. When the train finally arrived at the destination, Lhasa, it was already 9 o'clock at night. Chiyu and Shueiyue got off together. In the distance, he had already driven to the receiving platform. Someone was holding a large sign with the words Shueiyue written on it. Shueiyue stopped and looked deeply at Chiyu. She said, "I think we're going to break up. My father has a friend who is a doctor in Lhasa. He will come to pick me up, and then I will go to their hospital for an internship. My school is a little special, so my vacation will be earlier. I should be here for an internship until the end of August, and then I will return to the capital. I really want to do more things for the Tibetan people here. If we are fated, maybe we can meet again in the capital." After saying this, a trace of holy light naturally appeared on her face. Chiyu knew that this kind of light represented one meaning: kindness. It was impossible to say that he didn't have a trace of reluctance to part. Chiyu found somewhat gloomily that looking at this beautiful and pure girl, he actually didn't have any desire in his heart. Instead, there was more admiration. "Can you leave me your number?" Shueiyue revealed a smile like a blooming lily. "We will meet again if we are fated." Leaving these words, she pulled her luggage and quickened her steps towards the large sign that would pick her up. She didn't look back at Chiyu again. Chiyu stood where he was. He watched Shueiyue and the wooden sign with her name disappear into the crowd before coming back to his senses. He cursed inwardly. "What is wrong with me? Did I really like her? No, it's impossible. I only like her seductive appearance." He took out a slightly twisted cigarette pack from his pocket, took out a curved cigarette, and put it in his mouth. But when he tried to light it with his lighter, he found that his lighter had already malfunctioned. Only then did he remember that in a plateau environment like Lhasa, there was not enough oxygen, and it was difficult to use an ordinary lighter. Taking out the phone number Vol gave him, Chiyu dialed Vol's home number. "Vol? This is Chiyu." "Boss, where are you now?" Vol's voice was full of surprise. Chiyu looked around and carried his simple luggage to a corner before continuing. "I've already reached Tibet. How's the situation on your side? Is Yen Xiaoi dead?" Vol smiled bitterly and said, "That guy's life is as hard as a cockroach. My dad sent someone to inquire about him. He is not dead. He has a moderate concussion and is still in the hospital. He has already said that he will never let you go. You'd better hide for a few more days. Come back when things calm down." Chiyu breathed a sigh of relief. After all, as long as he was not dead, there would be no big deal. "Okay, we are brothers. How is your dad? Did he make things difficult for you?" Vol said, "It's nothing. I was just put in solitary confinement." "Boss, you know that Yin Xiaoi's family is a bit powerful. My dad has to go and mediate. Don't worry, I will be fine." He naturally would not tell Chiyu that because of this matter, he had been severely reprimanded and had been transferred to a strictly supervised boarding school for nobles. In the future, he would no longer have the chance to mingle around. "Then I won't say much. Take care of yourself." Chiyu hung up the phone. Although he and Vol had only known each other for a few years, he knew his good brother very well. There was no need to say much, but he would always remember what he owed Vol. Where should he go now? Chiyu was a little at a loss. Tibet was definitely a mysterious place for him. Here, he could not even tell north from south, let alone make friends. He hesitated for a while with his luggage, patted the more than 10,000 yuan in his bag, and made a decision in his heart. At night, the streets of Lhasa looked very beautiful amidst the flowing lights and vibrant colors. However, when Chiyu stepped out of the train station, he was once again stunned. That was because he could faintly see that not far behind these gorgeous streets, there was a misty golden brilliance. That hazy golden color was almost exactly the same as what he had seen in his dream. What was that place? After a simple inquiry, Chiyu soon got the answer. That was the most mysterious and holy place in Tibet, Potala Palace. Under the colorful lights, Potala Palace looked even more dignified and mysterious under the black night. Looking at the magnificent Potala Palace, Chiyu seemed to hear a voice calling him. His eyes were a little blurred, and his body seemed to be out of his control. He came to the streets of Lhasa, took a taxi, and went straight in the direction of Potala Palace, ignoring his hungry stomach. The staircase in front of Potala was curved from high to low. Looking from the bottom to the top, it seemed even more majestic and majestic. When Chiyu arrived at the foot of the mountain, he suddenly discovered that the summoning voice in his heart had disappeared. The almost golden palace looked so beautiful, and the scene from his dream appeared in front of him once again. However, this time was real. "Is it beautiful here?" A gentle voice sounded not far from Chiyu. The voice sounded very friendly, because it was authentic Beijing dialect, not Tibetan, which Chiyu could not understand at all. When he turned around, he saw a young monk in a monk's robe standing 5 meters behind him. There had been no footsteps before. It seemed that he had appeared there directly. Chiyu looked up and down at the young monk. He looked about the same age as him. He was not handsome, but his whole body exuded a harmonious sense of beauty. The young monk walked to Chiyu and stood beside him. His eyes also looked at the Potala Palace in front of him, and he said with a smile, "Potala Palace is built on a mountain with overlapping buildings. It is the winter palace of the Dalai Lamas of all generations. It is the ruling center of the old Tibet, and there are 8 pagodas dedicated to the 5th, 7th, and 13th Dalai Lamas. Potala Palace collects and preserves a large number of historical relics and rare treasures. Among them, there are more than 2,500 square meters of murals, nearly 1,000 pagodas, tens of thousands of statues, and tens of thousands of tang cards. The emperors of the Ming and Qing dynasties bestowed the Dalai Lama with gold books, gold seals, jade seals, and a large number of gold and silver items, porcelain, enamel, jade, brocade, and craftsmanship treasures. These cultural relics are colorful and rich in themes. In Potala Palace, the cultural relics in every hall are priceless." Hearing this, Chiyu couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. "You mean there are very valuable things here?" The young monk glanced at Chiyu. Although his eyes were very calm, it strangely made the dirty thoughts in Chiyu's heart disappear in an instant. "There are some things that can't be said casually here. Buddha is merciful," Chiyu said with a wry smile. "I'm not thinking too much. I just want to come and take a look." The young monk smiled and said, "But it's already past the visiting time. Why do you still want to come?" Chiyu scratched his head and said, "I don't know when the visiting time will be. As soon as I got off the train, I saw this place on the street. It seemed that a voice had been calling me, so I came. The atmosphere of religion here is really strong. On the way, I saw many Tibetans worshiping." The young monk said, "The main buildings of Potala Palace are the White Palace and the Red Palace. The White Palace is the winter palace of the Dalai Lama. It was also the location of the former Tibetan local government office. It is 7 stories high. The Red Palace is mainly the spiritual pagoda hall and various Buddhist halls of the Dalai Lama. Among them, the Great Hall of Solitary Perfection is the hall of the spiritual pagoda hall of the 5th Dalai Lama. It is also the largest hall in Potala Palace. It covers an area of 725 square meters, and the inner walls are full of murals. In the hall, above the throne of the Dalai Lama, hangs a horizontal board written by the Qianlong Emperor of the Qing dynasty, Yonglian Xuandi." Chiyu said with some doubt, "Why are you telling me this? Anyway, I'm not allowed to enter now, so I'm leaving." The young monk smiled and said, "There are some things in the world that need to be understood. However, you are really not suitable to visit Potala Palace, because your heart is not pure enough. More importantly, there is no Buddha in your heart." Chiyu snorted and said, "There is no Buddha. Is it something you can decide? Can you see my heart?" The smile on the young monk's face disappeared. He nodded seriously and said, "Yes, I can see your heart. Do you still remember the voice calling you? Do you still remember the scene in the dream? In fact, all of this is to let you come here to meet me." As soon as he heard the young monk talk about his dream, Chi-Yu's whole body suddenly trembled, and he said involuntarily, You can enter my dream? Buddha is invisible and formless. Please come with me." With that, the young monk smiled slightly and turned to walk to the side of the street. Although Chi-Yu's social status was very low, he was also a very curious person. When he heard the young monk talk about his dream, he followed without any hesitation. He could not wait to get the answer to the doubts in his heart. When the two of them arrived at the side of the street, the young monk walked to a car and stopped. It was a large off-road vehicle. The young monk first made a gesture to Chi-Yu, and then he got into the driver's seat. F***CK, this is Lincoln Navigator. If there was a trace of hesitation before, then at this moment, Chi-Yu's eagerness was even more obvious. All men like cars. Men often said that the car was their concubine. This situation was particularly obvious for Chi-Yu. Although he had no money and was idle all day, everyone had hobbies. Chi-Yu's hobby was cars, especially some of the world's famous cars. In addition to eating, most of his remaining money was spent on various car magazines. Sitting in the wide seat of the Lincoln Navigator, Chi-Yu was filled with shock. He said almost as if he was talking in a dream, one of the models of luxury off-road vehicles. The car is more than 2 meters long. It is the largest off-road vehicle in the world. It has superb comfort and stability. In addition, the engine cover is 4 meters high. It is like a warrior in a legend, reflecting an insufferably domineering aura. Is it so promising to become a monk? I heard that llamas can marry. It seems that I came to the right place this time. The young monk said, "It seems that you know a lot about cars." As he spoke, he had already started the car. The car drove very smoothly, and all the noise was cleverly filtered. Looking out through the huge window, it seemed that he was appreciating Lhasa from another perspective. Chi-Yu proudly said, "Of course I understand. I'm an expert, and I especially like off-road vehicles. Although this Lincoln Navigator is not bad, it's not my favorite. It's too bulky, and while it's good to sit on, it's not good to drive. My favorite is the Jewel Kian. Although the Kian's off-road capabilities are slightly lacking, its overall performance is the best. If I win the lottery one day, I'll definitely get myself one." After a while, Chi-Yu was surprised to find that the young monk had driven his Lincoln Navigator out of the urban area of Lhasa. He could not help feeling a little nervous. "Where are you taking me? Are you the kind of person who has a special hobby? Are you going to take me to a deserted place to rape me first and then kill me?" The young monk's face changed slightly, and he said, "I didn't expect that you would still have such dirty thoughts after seeing my Buddha's eyes. It seems that you are indeed a very special kind of person." Chi-Yu asked curiously, "What special kind of person?" The young monk glanced at him and said, "In your words, I am a scoundrel or a hooligan, and I am a real hooligan." "Ba, I'm talking nonsense. The place I am taking you to is where I live. It is called the Holy Buddha Rule. You may think the name is strange, but you can understand it as a city in Tibet. It is 270 kilometers away from Lhasa. We will drive for about 2 hours. If you're tired, you could take a rest first. There's a leather bag beside you in the car door. It is filled with sheep's milk. It is enough to satisfy your hunger." When Chi-Yu heard the monk say that he was a hooligan and a scoundrel, not only did he not feel ashamed, but he also felt proud of himself. He smiled, picked up the leather bag from the car door, and drank it. When the young monk answered him, he had already thought it through. To him, this young monk couldn't possibly have any special purpose. He wasn't handsome, and he looked poor and dejected. Who would think of someone like him? If it was for the more than 10,000 yuan in his bag, it would be even more ridiculous. Was there a need to drive a Lincoln to rob such a small amount of money? After thinking it through, Chi-Yu simply relaxed. Anyway, he had no specific place to go, so he simply handed himself over to the young monk. Adapting to circumstances was Chi-Yu's character. Otherwise, he would not be wandering on the street all day at the age of 19. The taste of the sheep's milk was very mellow, and there was even a faint smell of sheep's urine. But for Chi-Yu, who had not eaten for a few days, it could definitely be described as ambrosia. He drank most of the bag in one breath, and suddenly felt much more comfortable. After taking a break, He drank all the rest of the sheep's milk. The temperature in Tibet was relatively low. After all, it was a plateau. The warm air in the car was turned on. With something in his stomach, Chi-Yu suddenly felt a little tired. Although he did not have altitude sickness, he quickly fell asleep in this comfortable luxury off-road vehicle. After sleeping for a long time, a voice that seemed to come from the deepest part of his soul woke him up from his sleep. Opening his sleepy eyes, Chi-Yu found that the car had stopped, and the young monk was looking at him. "Have we arrived?" "Yes, please get out of the car." After the monk finished speaking, he took the lead to get out of the car. Chi-Yu followed him out of the car. Compared with the warmth in the car, the cold wind outside made him shiver. A huge temple appeared in front of him, which did not surprise Chi-Yu. The young monk had already said that he would take him to his place, so the monk naturally had to live in the temple. Chi-Yu followed behind the young monk and walked into the magnificent temple. The moment he entered, Chi-Yu was shocked because he saw the armed police that could often be seen in the capital. These armed police were armed with live ammunition, and there was a cordon not far from the door. "What is this place? Why are there armed police guarding it?" When the armed police saw the young monk, they bowed respectfully to him at the same time. The young monk smiled and nodded at them before leading Chi-Yu inside. "Why are there armed police here? Did someone in your temple commit a crime?" Chi-Yu asked curiously. The young monk said, "Your idea is really novel. This is a national A-class tourist reserve. It's not new to have armed police here. In Yenwang language, this temple is called Holy Buddha Temple." Chi-Yu suddenly felt a strange aura in the temple. After coming here, he realized that his heart seemed to have calmed down a lot. What a strange feeling. This place seems very strange. The young monk glanced at Chi-Yu and said, "Tibet has its own culture." The two of them continued walking into the temple. Due to the fact that the Saint Buddha temple was built on a mountain, Chi-Yu was already panting after climbing for a while. However, the young monk's breathing was still as steady as before. Even his footsteps were no different from before. "I say, how much longer do we have to walk?" Chi-Yu asked as he panted. Although he didn't have altitude sickness, climbing on a plateau was definitely not an easy task. The young monk said as he walked forward, "We're almost there." The two of them came to the door of a hall on the side and stopped. There were some strange patterns on the ancient and heavy door. The young monk waved at Chi-Yu before pushing the door open and entering. The interior of the hall was very quiet, and the statue of Buddha was enshrined in the middle of the spacious hall. The young monk walked to the front of the statue and bowed slightly before turning to Chi-Yu. In front of the statue of Buddha, the young monk appeared even more solemn and dignified. "All right, can you tell me now? Why did you bring me here?" Chi-Yu's patience had long run out. If it weren't for the Lincoln Navigator and the bag of goat's milk, he might have run away. The young monk said indifferently, "I brought you here to help you gain enlightenment." "Enlightenment? Are you scolding me? I'm not a blockhead. I don't need enlightenment." Chi-Yu looked at the young monk and snorted disdainfully. The young monk said, "Don't talk nonsense in front of Buddha. You came to Tibet because of fate. Fate arranged for you to meet me. You can treat me as your enlightener. To be honest, I didn't expect that such an important person to the East would be someone like you." Chi-Yu's expression changed as he said, "So you look down on me? I'm not interested in your temples. In that case, why don't we go our separate ways? You can send me away." Although he was a hoodlum, Chi-Yu was also a person with a strong sense of pride. If not for the fact that the other party was a monk, he would have already verbally abused him or beaten him up. When he was in the capital, Chi-Yu would not let go of anyone who looked down on him. Although he knew that it was futile, it was his way of protecting his self-esteem. The young monk acted as if he hadn't heard Chi-Yu's words and continued. "In the East, the Yenwang Republic is the pearl of the East. The mystery of the East is not something that ordinary people can understand. In this world, there's always been a group of people silently protecting the East. They have secretly contributed all their strength to the East. Under the control of fate, these guardians will appear once every 1,000 years. It is precisely because of their existence that the East can develop peacefully and peacefully." "Are you going to tell me a story?" Chi-Yu could not help but be stunned when he heard the young monk's words. The young monk shook his head and said, What I'm talking about is the story that is about to happen to you. There are many things in the world that are incomprehensible, and not all of these incomprehensible things are illusory. Many of them really exist. Chi thought of his strange dream, and his heart trembled. He said, "Then who are these people who protect the East that you mentioned? Could it be God? Is there really a God in this world?" The young monk shook his head and said, "Although there is no God, there is a great bloodline that has always been passed down. For you, I inherited the most advanced existence of this great bloodline." Chi suddenly laughed out loud. "Little monk, you're really interesting. You drove more than 200 kilometers in the middle of the night to get me here, just to tell me a story? I ran to Tibet and met a stranger like you. Then you brought me here. Do you think I can believe your words? Although your story is a little attractive, it has nothing to do with me. I'm leaving." With that, he turned around and walked out. Did you really not believe the young monk's words? No, he already believed it a little, but he suddenly felt a little uneasy. Under the influence of his self-protection, he decided to leave this place immediately. The young monk suddenly said, "Stop. If you want to know that everything I said is true, then please take off your shirt." Chi suddenly turned around. "Take off my clothes? Take off my clothes in front of Buddha? Although I don't believe in Buddha, I don't want to offend Buddha." The young monk smiled and said, "It seems that you already believe it, don't you? Take off your shirt. When people come to this world, they don't have any clothes. Buddha will forgive you." Chi snorted and said, "I don't want to know anything now, and I don't want to listen to your proof. I'm leaving." With that, he turned around and walked out in a panic. At this moment, a gentle force pulled his body. Chi was shocked to find that no matter how hard he struggled, he could not take another step. Under the control of that strange yet gentle power, he turned around once again. At this moment, the young monk had unknowingly appeared beside him and was face to face with him. With a wave of the young monk's right hand, that gentle power not only restrained Chi body, but at the same time, a gentle breeze blew away his clothes, revealing his bronze skin. Every generation of Kirin is so stubborn. Their stubbornness is expressed in sacrificing themselves to protect the East, but you express this stubbornness in fear. I don't know if it's my fortune or misfortune to be in the same generation as you." The young monk's face was a little gloomy. He raised his hand, stretched out his jade-like index finger, and lightly tapped on Chi heart. Chapter 4. Look at yourself. The young monk took a step back. Chi subconsciously looked down and happened to see black lines gradually emerging on his flat chest, accompanied by a faint silver light. The spiral black and silver horns looked so mighty and handsome. Chi was completely stunned. What is this?" At this time, Chi was not the only one who was surprised. The young monk's eyes also flashed with surprise. "Ink Kirin? It's actually Ink Kirin? When I first saw you, I was prepared for the worst, but fate played a huge joke on me. You turned out to be the strongest person in the Kirin clan, Ink Kirin. I never thought that Ink Kirin would be born in this generation." Chi still looked down at his chest. The clear black monster had a pair of silver eyes, and it seemed to be looking at him. A feeling of flesh and blood suddenly filled Chi-Yu's body with strength. He was surprised to find that his muscles seemed to have expanded a little. The fatigue from walking after entering the temple had disappeared. Although his upper body was naked, he no longer felt cold. The young monk took a deep breath and said, "Now, can you calm down and listen to me?" Chi raised his head and looked at the young monk. There was a complicated look in his eyes, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. "When I was a child, my biggest wish was to be an extraordinary person. Now it seems that this wish is coming true. Although it's like a dream, I won't run away. The impending fate is like a gangster raping a beautiful woman. Since I can't choose, I can only try my best to feel the beauty of it. Tell me, but I want to hear your introduction first. I think you must not be an ordinary monk." After listening to Chi-Yu's metaphor, the young monk was speechless. "It seems that you can't leave the topic of women." Although there was some dissatisfaction in his words, the invisible restraints around Chi-Yu's body had already been removed. Chi-Yu chuckled and said, "Since there are two kinds of humans in this world, men and women, it is natural for them to be attracted to each other. Tell me, who are you?" Then I'll listen to your story. However, to be honest, I don't know much about Tibetan Buddhism in Tibet. Maybe I won't know your identity even if you tell me, but I still want to hear it." The young monk smiled indifferently and said, "Although the status of the holy Buddha temple in Tibet is not as good as the Patala Palace, it also has its special place. Only the most devout lamas would cultivate here. More than 10 years ago, when the most famous master here passed away, I was still an ordinary child. He chose me to inherit his mantle and gave me the most precious collection of ancient books. In a sense, you can understand him as the master of this Saint Buddha temple." At this point, he paused and looked at Chiyu and said in a deep voice, "Therefore, I am just a disciple of the Buddha who has been practicing Buddhism since childhood. We cultivators are very indifferent to everything in the outside world. What reputation and the like are all fabricated. Therefore, I naturally don't have a name that you know to prove that what I said is true. As a monk, I only have one best explanation. A monk does not lie. You are in charge of such a big temple? Okay, I'll listen to you." This time, Chi was really a little surprised. Looking at the mysterious young monk in front of him, he actually believed it in his heart. Although this monk was about the same age as him, he felt that he was like a vast sea that could contain everything. The young monk smiled indifferently and said, "You can call me Zagru. I've already said the 2 words Kirin just now, so you should be able to guess that the tattoo on your body is Kirin. Actually, this is not a tattoo, but a symbol that has been sleeping in your blood, or should I say, the bloodline of Kirin. Kirin is an auspicious sign from the heavens, the leader of all beasts, symbolizing auspiciousness and peace. There are also many types of Kirin. The ordinary Kirin has golden hair and a silver body, but you are different. You are actually the most special and powerful ink Kirin among Kirin. As far as I know, you're the first human in history to inherit the bloodline of Ink Kirin." "Ink Kirin? You're saying that I am Ink Kirin? Kirin seems to be able to fly, right? If I become the real Kirin, won't I be able to fly too? This thing is black, but it looks passable." As he spoke, Chiyu looked at the tattoo on his chest with satisfaction. "I wanted to get a tattoo for a long time. In the movies I used to watch, there's a green dragon on the left, a white tiger on the right, and an old bull in the middle. It's so cool." Zagru stared at him with wide eyes and said, "You're actually comparing the bloodline of Ink Kirin to that hooligan tattoo? Forget it. That's your nature. I'll get straight to the point." He was really afraid that if he spoke too much to this guy in front of him, his Buddha-like nature would be greatly affected. In our East, there has always been a group of true guardians. There aren't many of them, but they all have a mission that has been passed down since ancient times, and that is to protect our East, this piece of pure land, so that it will not be taken advantage of by evil, and so that it will not be broken by foreign enemies. And this group of guardians is led by 12 warriors who represent the 12 earthly branches. Wait a minute. What are the 12 earthly branches? Chiyu's curious gaze made Zagru speechless. You don't even know about the 12 earthly branches? I'm really ashamed that you're a descendant of the Yellow Emperor. You don't know about the 12 earthly branches, but you should have heard of the 12 Zodiac. These 12 warriors represented the Zodiac, guardian gods of the 12 Zodiac animals. They have their own abilities, and not only are they powerful warriors, but they're also the guardians of the East. Chiyu suddenly understood and said, "So that's how it is. I know about the 12 Zodiac. I could memorize them when I was in primary school. Isn't it just rat, ox, and so on?" Zagru forced himself not to look at Chiyu as if he was looking at an idiot, and said reluctantly, "You can say that. The 12 Zodiac are rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, chicken, dog, and pig. The 12 characters that correspond to the 12 Zodiac are Z, Cho, In, Mao, Chun, Siwu, Wei, Shun, Yu Su, and Hai. These 12 characters are the 12 earthly branches. Forget it. You won't understand, even if I explain it to you. You only need to know that the 12 Zodiac guardian gods have always been guarding the East. What does it have to do with me? I'm born in the year of the monkey. Don't tell me you think that I'm one of the 12 guardian gods." Chiyu's interest was piqued. At the very least, the Zodiac guardian god title sounded very impressive. Zaglu shook his head and said, "Of course not. Even I can only try my luck when searching for the 12 Zodiac Guardians that appear once in 1,000 years. Up until now, I've only encountered 3. When the 12 Zodiac Guardian gods appear every 1,000 years, the biggest difficulty is how to gather them together. Only when they are together and complement each other can the full strength of the Zodiac Guardian gods be exerted. Only then can they have the ability to completely protect the East. Therefore, in addition to the 12 Zodiac Guardian gods, there is also a leader. He has the mission of commanding the Zodiac Guardian gods and gathering them together. He is also the leader of all the East Guardians." Speaking of this, Zagru's eyes fell on the lifelike black monster on Chiyu's chest. Chiyu said, "Do you mean that I'm the guy who commands the 12 Zodiac Guardian gods and has to protect the East? In other words, Kirin you mentioned, isn't Kirin something that only exists in the legends?" Zagru sighed softly and said, "Actually, many of the records in the Yanhuang mythology are based on reality. Kirin does exist, and you are the one who is Kirin's bloodline. The ink Kirin pattern on your body is the best proof. Before you came here, when we were still sitting on the train, I had already felt the aura of Kirin's bloodline in your body. I met you through my Buddhist power. Do you still remember that dream? In that dream, I used Buddhist energy as a guide to awaken your Qilin bloodline from its slumber. That's why you slept for so long. It's because your body needs a period of nourishment after receiving the Qilin bloodline. I led you here to help you fully awaken your Kirin's bloodline. This awakening process is called initial awakening for the 12 Zodiac Guardian gods and the king of the Zodiac Guardian gods, Kirin." Chiyu's face became calm, and he asked, "If I become the Kirin you mentioned, then what do I need to do?" Zagru's body exuded a layer of peaceful aura, and he said seriously, "As the king of the Zodiac and the commander of the 12 Zodiac Guardian gods, your mission is to protect the East. When there is any abnormal situation in the East, you will need to lead our Zodiac Guardian gods to solve it. The birth of the Zodiac Guardian gods will inevitably mean the appearance of the evil forces in the East. At the same time, as the Guardian of the East, you may also have to face challenges from the West." Chiyu walked in front of Zagru and revealed a strange smile. He raised his hand and patted Zagru's shoulder. He said in a deep voice, "Little monk, I can see that you are a very righteous person. You are a good person who takes responsibility for the world." Zagru stared blankly for a moment and said, "I'm just doing what I should do. Everyone has their own predestined fate, just like you, who was born with the bloodline of the Qilin." The smile on Chiyu's face became wider. "Because you are a good person and a compassionate monk. So I think if I insist on leaving, you will not stop me, right? Goodbye." After saying that, he turned around and walked out. Zagru was stunned for a moment. After all, he was not even 20 years old. Seeing Chiyu turn around and leave, he suddenly felt a little anxious. You're leaving just like that? Don't you want to be the king of the Zodiac?" Chiyu said without turning his head. "Who would want to be the king of the Zodiac? It is not that easy to be a hero. Needless to say, if I become the king of the Zodiac, the enemies I will face will be very terrifying. You said it yourself. I am a hooligan or a scoundrel. For a hooligan or scoundrel, nothing is more important than living. I'm only 19 years old, and I have not lived long enough. Although I have also dreamed of being a hero, I have watched a lot of TV shows and novels. It is not that easy to be a hero. If I am not careful, I will die before I achieve anything. So, I do not have the thought of being a hero. I am just a nobody, and I only want to be a nobody. I want to be a Superman who wears his underwear on the outside in the TV. It is just a dream. Don't bother me anymore. I am not a warrior, and I am not a hero." As he said that, Chiyu had already walked to the entrance of the hall. He had grasped Zagru's character. As a monk, he would not force himself. Zagru was anxious. Although he looked down on this guy in front of him, Kirin was too important to all the Zodiac Guardian gods. "Wait, can you tell me what you wish for in this life? Or should I say, what is your biggest wish?" Chiyu stood at the door and turned around. His eyes were full of longing. "Actually, my wish is very simple. I live on the west side of the capital. I once knew a big brother. His nickname was Smoke Man. He once said something that inspired me a lot. He said, "Sleep until you wake up naturally. Count money until your hands cramp." I added 2 more sentences on the basis of these 2 sentences. They formed all of my wishes. I added, "Beautiful women come to my door and let me sleep with them. My golden spear will never fall." These 4 sentences, when put together, were my life's ideals. However, although I am just a nobody, I also know that wishes are beautiful, but they're also very difficult to achieve. So, I have never had any extravagant expectations. Seeing that Chiyu was about to leave again, Zagru hurriedly said, "These wishes of yours are not impossible to achieve." Although, as a monk, he really didn't want to get involved in these mortal affairs. In order to make Chiyu stay, he had to go along with it. Sure enough, as soon as Zagru said this, it immediately aroused Chiyu's interest. "Oh, then tell me, how can it be achieved? Can it be achieved by becoming Kirin? Even if it is true, I don't want to enjoy it for a few days and then die." Zagru said with a wry smile. "In fact, what you said is nothing more than the word power. With power, everything will become simple. In the East, the status of Kirin is absolutely transcendent, and what you will face is far less dangerous than you think. As the king of the Zodiac guardian gods, all the Zodiac guardian gods will take your safety as their responsibility. They will not hesitate to sacrifice their lives to protect you. Moreover, as the unprecedented Ink Kirin, you have a special ability that other Kirin don't have. You are now only in the initial stage of awakening. As long as I help you to enlighten your acupoints, your Ink Kirin bloodline will be fully awakened, and you will immediately have this special ability." Chiyu looked at Zagru and said, "What ability? Don't tell me that I will become a super master after you enlighten me. I have read many novels, and I understand the principle of gradual progress. No one can eat fatso in one bite." Zagru shook his head and said, "Of course not. You are right. Gradual progress is a process that all cultivation methods have to go through. The more effort you put in, the more power you will have. In ancient times, Kirin was one of the most powerful divine beasts. However, Kirin has a fatal weakness, and that is their horn. Once their horn is chopped off, Kirin's life will also disappear. However, there is an exception in the Kirin clan, and that is Ink Kirin. Ink Kirin has a strong vitality that other Kirin can't compare to. Even if their horn is chopped off, they can still survive. Moreover, their horn will grow again." Chiyu said calmly, "What do you mean by telling me this?" Zagru said, "What I mean is that as long as your Ink Kirin bloodline is fully awakened, you will be able to have a strong self-recovery ability. Unless your head is chopped off, you will be able to recover in a short time, even if your other limbs are broken." Chiyu was stunned. F***CK. Then am I Kirin or a cockroach? Zagru smiled and said, "Of course you are Kirin. How can a cockroach be compared to Ink Kirin? Not only that, because Kirin is an auspicious sign from the heavens. As long as your bloodline is awakened, anyone who offends you will be punished by fate. Although the punishment may not be severe, an auspicious sign is not something anyone can offend." Chiyu was pleasantly surprised. "Do you mean that anyone who offends me in the future will be out of luck?" Zagru said, "In a sense, you can understand it that way. However, it is only to a certain extent." Chiyu shook his head and said, "It still won't work. If I only have a strong recovery ability, then I will become a punching bag. I won't do it." Zaglu suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "Of course it won't be like this. As the inheritor of the Qilin, you naturally have a cultivation method that belongs to the Qilin. As long as you are willing to cultivate diligently, you will definitely become an expert. Furthermore, you have the Zodiac guardian god to protect you. So how can you become a punching bag? Among the guardians of the East, I am called Tianin. My ability is to help you and the other Zodiac guardians awaken their abilities. However, I can only sense their aura within 100 miles. You are different. After you turn 18, no matter where you are, I will be able to sense your existence. You also have the ability to sense the aura of any Zodiac guardian within a distance of 500 miles. 2 years ago, I traveled all over the country and finally found 3 Zodiac guardians under my unremitting efforts. Some of them have already awakened, while others were awakened by me. As long as you are willing to accept the responsibility of Kirin, then they will naturally become your guardians. Before you find all 12 Zodiac guardians, you can temporarily ignore any troubles that occur in the East. You can rest assured that the Zodiac guardians are the most important among the guardians of the East. They are the most powerful existences, and the most important one among the Zodiac guardians is you, the king of the Zodiac. Only under your leadership can the Zodiac guardians exert their full strength. Therefore, protecting your safety is absolutely the most important thing. In the next few years, your task is actually very simple. You just need to find the other Zodiac guardians and practice your own cultivation. There won't be any danger. As for our guardians of the East, some of them are families that have been passed down since ancient times. These big families have great power. As the king of the Zodiac, you will naturally get their help. It will be much easier to realize your wishes. Chiyu tilted his head and said, "That sounds pretty good. All right, I'll agree to it. However, shouldn't you at least show me something?" As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand and rubbed his thumb, index finger, and middle finger together. There was a wretched and lascivious smile on his face, revealing his true colors of a ruffian. In fact, from the moment he saw the Kirin pattern on his body and Zagru told him about his dream, Chiyu had already believed him. And when Chiyu said that he wanted to leave, he was just playing hard to get. When he was very young, Chiyu had vowed that even if his name could not be passed down in history, he must be infamous for thousands of years. He would never live in vain. How could he give up such a good opportunity when it suddenly appeared in front of him? However, extortion was the nature of a ruffian. The little monk in front of him was obviously not an ordinary person. How could Chiyu be reconciled if he did not get some benefits from him? Obviously, Zagru did not understand what Chiyu meant. Looking at his rubbing fingers, he asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" Chiyu laughed and said, "Don't you Buddhists all have magic weapons? Give me two, so that I can protect myself in the future." He put on a righteous look and said, "As the king of the Zodiac guardian gods, in order to better protect our great East, having more magic weapons will naturally make things smoother." Looking at Chiyu's appearance, Zagru could not help but feel a little strange. Naturally, he could see what Chiyu was thinking. For the first time in his life, he had the impulse to beat someone. But although he was young, he was a virtuous monk after all. He sighed and said, "I knew you would not let me go. Well, this is for you. Only this thing is suitable for you." As he spoke, he took off a string of green Buddha beads from his wrist and handed it to Chiyu. Chiyu rejoiced in his heart as he hurriedly walked in front of Zaglu. He did not even say a word of courtesy as he received the prayer beads. He could not help but feel a little disappointed as he held them in his hand. The prayer beads were dark green in color and gave off a simple and unadorned aura. They were slightly warm to the touch and did not emit any dazzling light. He could not tell what kind of treasure it was. Zagru said, "This string of beads was passed on to me by the ancestors. It has the effect of calming the mind and driving away evil. It is my most precious thing. As Kirin, I will give it to you. However, if you want to fully use the Buddha power in it, you need to constantly practice and understand it. There are 17 Buddha beads in total. They are smaller than lotus seeds and larger than soybeans. Do you know what they are?" Chiyu looked at them and looked back at them. There did not seem to be anything special about them. Moreover, they were not very round. Although the surface was bright, they looked a little strange. Don't tell me that this is the legendary Bodhi seed. That thing seems to be worthless. Zagru looked at the Buddha beads with reverence in his eyes. This string of Buddha beads cannot be measured by value. With it on you, unless it is a monster that has cultivated for more than 1,000 years or an ancient giant beast, it will not be able to invade your body. These 17 Buddha beads are the Buddha's tooth relics of 17 ancestors. They are priceless treasures in Buddhism. What? These are Buddha beads made from Buddha's tooth relics. You are really extravagant." Chiyu looked at Zagru blankly. Zagru shook his head and said, "No, this is not extravagant. This string of Buddha beads has a history of thousands of years. Since the day the Zodiac guardian god appeared, This string of Buddha beads has been used by generations of Tianyin. You're the first person besides Tianyin to have it. I hope you will not violate the will of the ancestors. With it on you, you should be more assured of your safety. Now, can you accept my enlightenment? Chiyu did not wear the Buddha beads. Instead, he respectfully handed the beads to Zagru. Although I don't believe in Buddhism, I know the importance of Buddha's tooth relics to Buddhism. This thing is too precious. I can't accept it. I promise you that you will enlighten me. Zagru looked at Chiyu. At this time, Chiyu's eyes no longer had that obscene light. From his clear eyes, it could be seen that he was sincere in returning the Buddha beads. The sloppy guy in front of him seemed to have changed into a different person, which made Zaglu a little uncomfortable. He didn't take it. If we're talking about magic treasures, I only have this one. As an ascetic monk, I don't have any magic treasures like you think I do. I don't have anything else. Chiyu shook his head and said, from the time I was sensible, I have experienced too much of the fickleness of human nature. No one looked up to me. The world is full of deceit. However, from you, I see a real good person. No, I should say a good monk. All right, I don't want anything. Enlighten me. From your performance, I can see that the king of the Zodiac, is very important. Under the premise of protecting my life, I really want to experience what it feels like to be a Superman who wears his underwear on the outside. Zagru took the beads and held Chi-Yu's left hand. He said, people are good by nature. You have finally shown me the kindness in your heart. Since this bracelet came from my hand, it proves that it is fated with you. You don't have to refuse. Although the Buddha beads are precious, as long as it is used in the right way, I think Buddha will approve. As he spoke, he had already put the Buddha beads on Chi-Yu's left wrist. Chi-Yu could clearly feel a cooling sensation traveling up his wrist. All 36,000 pores on his body seemed to open up, giving him an indescribable sense of comfort. The deepest sensation came from his brain, which was unprecedentedly clear. It was as if everything around him had become clear. At this moment, the cool air suddenly turned warm. Another warm and comfortable feeling replaced everything from before. There was no discomfort like the extreme cold and heat. The two streams of air that appeared one after the other seemed to be nourishing his body. When the Buddha beads were put on Chi-Yu's wrist, the 17 dark green Buddha beads emitted a layer of lustrous luster. Although it was not an obvious light, under the nourishment of the cool and warm air, Chi-Yu could clearly see the changes on the Buddha beads. Even an idiot could see the preciousness of this Buddhist treasure. Zagru, what are you doing? Chi-Yu's voice was filled with surprise. Although Chi-Yu coveted this treasure very much, he had an inexplicable respect for Buddhism after meeting Zagru. Therefore, he had returned the 8 Buddha beads to Zagru, which was against his conscience. But now that Zagru insisted on giving it to him, he could not help but have a more favorable impression of Zagru. The feeling of being treated sincerely warmed his heart. Zagru looked at Chi-Yu with a smile and said, the Buddha is merciful and delivers all living beings from suffering. I hope these 17 Buddha beads can bring you a whole new world. You don't have to decline it anymore. Your mind is not stable, so you can avoid any possible danger during the process of enlightening your apertures with it. I know you still have many questions in your heart. After I enlighten your apertures, when your Kirin blood is fully awakened, I will explain to you. Chi-Yu nodded. He looked at the Buddha beads in his hand and felt a little strange. Then what should I do now? Zagru pointed to the ground and said, please sit. Only then did Chi-Yu see that there were a few depressions on the ground. Zagru said, this is the place where I and the 2 previous masters trained. If we sit for a long time, even the hard rocks will change. This is the principle of dripping water wearing through a stone. Although a minute of training won't be of much use, if you persevere for every minute, you will make a qualitative leap. Chapter 5. Zagru came in front of Chi-Yu and sat calmly opposite him. He smiled and said, you can treat the process of enlightenment as a nap or a dream. Close your eyes. Chi-Yu did not play any tricks this time and obediently closed his eyes. Most of his attention was still focused on the string of Buddha beads on his wrist. The stability brought by the Buddha beads allowed him to face everything in front of him calmly. Zagru's appearance was very ordinary. He wore a simple robe without any decoration. However, the moment he sat in front of Chiyu, Zagru seemed to change his appearance. His calm and deep eyes suddenly emitted a dazzling light. His whole body was enveloped by a layer of milky, white, auspicious airflow, just like the Buddha, who was illuminated by the Buddha's aura. A milky white light spot lit up on his forehead. Halos emitted from it and enveloped his and Chiyu's bodies. If an enlightened monk were to see this scene, he would have been so shocked that he would have forgotten all the precepts of Buddhism and cried out in surprise. This was because the white speck of light on Zaglu's forehead was the most precious thing in Buddhism, the living Sarira with the strongest Buddhist power. Living relic was almost extinct in the human world. It was not a Buddhist treasure that could be obtained through a lifetime of cultivation. There had to be at least 10 generations of eminent monks who passed down their Buddhist thoughts from generation to generation. Only then would it be possible to form a living relic. Living relic was an absolute treasure of heaven and earth. Its Buddhist power was not strong, but it was pure. Anyone who came into contact with it could at least extend their lifespan by more than 10 years. There were also many wonderful functions that only the senior monk who owned the living relic knew. Unfortunately, Chiyu could not see this scene in front of him. Under the illumination of the Buddha's aura, his consciousness had already entered a deep sleep. At this moment, the relic bead in his hand was also affected by the living relic. Otherwise, he would have reevaluated the young monk in front of him. Zaglu clasped his hands together in front of his chest, and the peaceful Buddhist aura instantly doubled in speed as it surged toward Chiyu. The pure Buddhist aura that ordinary people would not even be able to touch was actually unreservedly rushing into his body. Against the backdrop of the Buddha Chi, the ink Kirin head on Chiyu's chest looked even more lifelike. Kirin seemed to be rising from Chiyu's body. A faint black airflow gradually appeared, and Ink Kirin's silver eyes lit up. Zagru sighed lightly and said, "The heavens really know how to play tricks on people." The first time Ink Kirin had appeared, it was Ink Kirin of the Four Clouds. It seemed that heaven's will was fair. It was a pity that Ink Kirin was born with a spiritual body. Buddha is merciful. I hope that he can successfully complete everything under his protection. When Chiyu was about to leave earlier, he had already clearly seen the 4 blurry cloud patterns behind Chiyu. At the same time, he stretched out his index fingers and pointed forward. 2 milky white rays of light pointed right at the position of Chiyu's heart, where the Ink Kirin head was. A loud and clear sound filled the hall. The Ink Kirin pattern on Chiyu's body actually moved. As the black and silver colors intertwined, the Ink Kirin seemed to rise into the air. The huge energy instantly expanded, and the whole hall was filled with an auspicious aura. The Ink Kirin on Chiyu's body suddenly expanded in a gaseous state. The huge transparent Ink Kirin rose into the air, and its silver and black horn pointed to the top of the hall. A loud roar rippled through the hall. The huge body of Ink Kirin spun around Chiyu's body, and the Buddha's aura rushed out and poured into every pore of Chiyu's body. A total of 4 black veins appeared on Chiyu's body. His skin could no longer block the black light emitted by the veins. The arrangement of the black veins was very strange. They all appear between Chiyu's chest and abdomen, and the starting point was Chiyu's head. The color of the 4 black veins continued to deepen under the infusion of the Buddha's aura. The Ink Kirin was still hovering in the air. Silver-black rays of light shot out from the Ink Kirin's horn and poured into the top of Chiyu's head. A look of pain appeared on Chiyu's face. Although he had lost consciousness, the human body's instincts were still there. The 4 veins turned from black to silver, and then from silver to black. This process kept repeating. A smile appeared on Zagru's face. He put his hands in front of him and made the posture of Buddha holding flowers. The Buddha's aura did not stop at all. Under the effect of the living Sarira, it continued to rush toward Chiyu's body. It required a huge amount of energy to completely activate the power sleeping in a person's veins. The burden on the caster's body was very great. Even if it was successful, it would have a great impact on the caster's body. However, Zagru did not hesitate at all. The Buddha's aura he released was completely in the spirit of dedication. In this ancient hall, the sacred ceremony continued. The alternation of day and night outside did not affect anything in the hall. Time passed bit by bit. Chiyu's expression became more serene, but Zagru's face gradually paled. Large drops of sweat soaked through his simple monk's robes. The Sarira bead on Chiyu's hand emitted a bright green light under the influence of the living Sarira. It buzzed constantly. It was precisely because of its existence that Chiyu had a stable state of mind during this extremely difficult ceremony. Just as Zagru had said, when Chiyu woke up from his lethargy, he seemed to have only had a dream. In the dream, he saw himself surrounded by 4 masses of light. These 4 masses of light were red, purple, cyan, and blue. When the 4 colors of light completely converged, his dream had also ended. When he opened his eyes, the hall was still as dark as before. Everything in the hall was the same as before Chiyu fell asleep. Nothing had changed, but Zagru had disappeared. Looking down at his chest, Chiyu was surprised to find that the pattern of the ink Kirin had disappeared. Although his upper body was naked, he did not feel cold at all. He stood up and moved his body. Everything seemed to be the same as before. Nothing had changed. He was still himself, other than the additional Sarira bead on his hand, which could prove everything that had happened. Chiyu felt that he was still the same person as before. There was no special power in him. I can't have become Superman, right? Chiyu thought to himself as he squatted down and forcefully slapped the ground with his palm. Ouch! The hard ground caused his palm to hurt, but there was no change to the hard stone ground. Oh my God! Is Zagru lying to me? Why is he still the same as before? No matter what, as Kirin, I should be a little more fierce. Now, it seems that there is no difference from before. Do I still have to rely on my breaking brick martial art? As he moved his body, Chiyu found that although he seemed to have only slept, he had been sitting cross-legged. His body should have been a little stiff, but now it did not feel like that. Every joint was very flexible, and his body was very relaxed. It was as if his muscles and bones had become a lot softer after the sleep. His shirt was on the ground beside him. Chiyu picked it up and put it on. He was surprised to find that his shirt seemed to be a little small, and it was tight when he put it on. He looked down at his body again. From his point of view, his body did not seem to have changed. However, his body seemed to have expanded a little as if it had a second puberty. It was not the expansion of his muscles, but the bones and meridians of his whole body. He just had not noticed it yet. Taking out his mobile phone from his pocket, Chiyu found that it had run out of battery. He hesitated and left in a hurry. Vol only gave him a mobile phone, but there was no charger. Now, he could not charge it even if he wanted to. The mobile phone had become useless. Putting the mobile phone into his pocket, Chiyu decided to go out and find Zagru. He still had a lot of questions in his mind, and these questions needed to be solved by Zagru. Just when Chiyu was about to walk to the door opened by itself. The old and heavy wooden door made a squeaking sound. Zagru, who was wearing a dark red robe, walked in from the outside. When he saw Chiyu, he was stunned for a moment and said in surprise, "You woke up so soon? It's a long time earlier than I expected." Chiyu scratched his head and said, "I didn't sleep for another 30 hours, did I?" Zagla smiled faintly and said, "Of course not. You've already slept for 36 days. I originally thought that you would only wake up after 49 days, but you woke up 13 days earlier. It seems that the bloodline of Ink Kirin is indeed different from that of ordinary Kirin." Chiyu's eyes widened. "What did you say? You slept for 36 days in one go. Are you kidding me?" Zagru shook his head and said, "A monk does not lie. I help you awaken the bloodline for 9 days. After that, the bloodline will merge with your body for the next 27 days. That's exactly 36 days. It's already the middle of June now. Well, there's nothing wrong with sleeping a little longer. Then shouldn't you tell me what benefits there are after awakening the bloodline of Ink Kirin?" Chiyu had always been an adaptable person. Although Zagru's words were a little hard to believe, he quickly accepted the truth. Zagru smiled and said, There's no hurry. I'll bring you to take a bath first. You'll feel more refreshed, and your spirit will be better. Please follow me." With that said, he turned around and walked out of the hall. Chi followed Zagru out of the hall. As soon as he stepped out of the hall, the glaring sunlight was unbearable. He quickly used his hand to block the sunlight. After a short period of adaptation, he felt a little better. The courtyard was very quiet. There was no one else around. An ancient tree stood in the middle of the courtyard. Perhaps because of the highland climate, this tree that Chiyu didn't recognize was already very thick, but it wasn't very tall. Taking a few deep breaths of the fresh and somewhat cold air, Chiyu only felt that his whole body was indescribably comfortable. He followed Zagru through 2 courtyards and came to a room. On the way, they met some lamas in the temple. They all bowed respectfully to Zagru. The respect in their eyes was so sincere. Chiyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this new room. The style of this room was far too different from the rest of the temple. All kinds of modern household appliances were available. Although there weren't any extravagant decorations, it looked like something a household in a big city would have. Zagru walked to the sofa and sat down. He smiled and said, "Everything here is a gift from the government, including the Lincoln off-road vehicle you saw. The bathroom is over there. You can go in and wash yourself. I've prepared a clean set of clothes for you and put them inside. Usually, people from our temple rarely come here." Chiyu didn't know what to say. Ever since he came to Tibet, everything he had experienced was so mysterious. None of this seemed real, but it all really existed. For Chiyu, taking a bath was just a simple process. Compared to the speed at which ordinary people took a bath, he was much faster. Just 10 minutes later, Chiyu had already walked out refreshed. His beard had been shaved off, and his hair was simply combed behind his head. His whole body exuded a refreshing smell after taking a bath. His originally bronze skin had become much fairer after more than 30 days of deep sleep. During the awakening process, his body had developed invisibly for the second time. He was more handsome than before. His originally thin body looked much taller because of the expansion of his skeleton. Wearing simple jeans and a loose vest, he had the aura of a sunny boy. However, his eyes were still as naughty as before, but it also added a bit of evil attraction to him. Well, taking a bath is indeed much more comfortable. "Zagru, the clothes you bought for me fit quite well. Before I went in, I thought you would give me a monk's robe or something. I didn't expect you to be so thoughtful. You even have underwear." As he spoke, he sat down next to Zagru. After taking a hot shower, his entire body felt light. It was indescribably pleasant, as if his entire body had become much more relaxed. Zagru glanced at the Saraira beads on Chiyu's hand and said, "The awakening of your Kirin bloodline is very smooth, much smoother than I expected. Now, you're the first 4-cloud Kirin in history. At the same time, you are also an ink Kirin." At this time, Chiyu calmed down. He found that Zagru looked much more haggard than before he fell asleep. There was not a trace of blood on his face. His eyes were still so peaceful, but the tiredness and slight weakness in his eyes did not escape Chiyu's eyes. Although Chiyu did not know why his senses had become so sharp, he clearly felt that the awakening of his Kirin bloodline must be the reason why Zagru was so weak. "Now you can tell me in detail what's going on with the Qilin bloodline and the Zodiac guardian god you mentioned." Chiyu looked at Zagru attentively. When he heard that his Kirin bloodline awakening was very smooth, his heart could not help but heat up. If he could be as strong as that Superman who wore underwear on the outside, would all the beauties in the world tolerate him? Thinking of this, the smile on his face could not help but become a little lascivious. Zagru obviously saw the expression on Chiyu's face, but he pretended not to see it and said seriously, "Whether it is you or the other 12 Zodiac warriors, the abilities are divided according to the clouds. There are a total of 9 clouds. Every time you increase a cloud, your strength will increase correspondingly. For the Zodiac warriors, if they increase a cloud, their strength will be increased by 1. 5 times. In other words, the strength of 2 clouds is equivalent to 1. 5 times the strength of 1 cloud, and the strength of 3 clouds is equivalent to 1. 5 times the strength of 2 clouds which is 25 times the strength of one cloud. The higher the level, the stronger the strength. The higher the cloud level, the more obvious the increase in strength will be. At the last 3 clouds, every increase in cloud will directly increase the strength by 100%. Chi Yu's eyes lit up. He said, "That means I directly have the strength of 4 clouds. Then I am very powerful." Zagru shook his head and said, "No, it is not like that. The awakening of the bloodline is one thing. The strength is another. You yourself said that no one can reap without sowing, and the cultivation of the Zodiac Guardian is even more so. As the king of all the Zodiac Guardians, you need to cultivate from the very beginning. Now you do not even have the strength of 1 cloud. The 4 clouds, Kiran, I am talking about is not referring to your strength having increased to the level of 4 clouds, but the ability you possess. In ancient times, the Kiran clan was divided into 4 types. Although apart from the Ink Kiran, most of the Kiran looked similar, their abilities were different. For example, the Fire Kiran was an expert in fire, and the Wind Kiran was an expert in wind. The Kiran was generally divided into 4 types: thunder, fire, wind, and water. Each Kiran would have their own magic cloud, and the color of the cloud represented the attribute of their ability. The Thunder Kiran's magic cloud was purple, the Fire Kiran was red, the Wind Kiran was cyan, and the Water Kiran was blue. In history, there have been Kiran with 2 or more clouds, which meant that they had 2 or more attributes. But you have 4 magic clouds, which are of these 4 colors. In other words, the 4 clouds Kiran I am talking about is the Kiran with 4 attributes. You have the thunder, fire, wind, and water abilities at the same time. This is the first time in the history of Kiran. Even the ancient Kiran king did not have 4 attributes. Chi Yu was overjoyed. He said, "Then isn't I very strong? 4 abilities at once? Wah, doesn't this have the effect of cocktail? I didn't expect me to be a genius." A hint of sadness flashed in Zagru's eyes, but Chi Yu did not notice it because he was too happy. In a sense, you are indeed the greatest genius in the history of Kiran, and also the most talented Kiran. As long as you are willing to work hard and have 4 abilities at the same time, you will indeed be much stronger than the ordinary Kiran. Coupled with Ink Kiran's natural self-healing ability and tyrannical body, in theory, you can become the strongest among the Eastern Guardians. Looking at Chi Yu's excited expression, Zagru said calmly. Chi Yu nodded and said, "Then hurry up and tell me how to cultivate. The feeling of being an expert must be pretty good." Zagru smiled indifferently and said, "The Zodiac Guardian's cultivation method is basically similar to yours. In general, it is called the Ascending Cloud Technique. But your Ascending Cloud Technique is a little special. It is called the Ascending Qilin Technique. Cultivation is arduous and long. If you want to obtain superhuman strength, you must pay a superhuman price. You don't have to be too happy. Although 4 attributes are good, if you want to reach the 1 cloud realm as a whole, you must cultivate all 4 attributes to the 1 cloud. Only then can you continue to cultivate to the 2 clouds. The power of the 4 attributes is incomparable, but every time you want to continue to improve, the strength of the 4 attributes must be balanced. In other words, if you want to cultivate to the 3 clouds realm, you must first achieve the 2 clouds and all 4 attributes. As the king of the Zodiac, your strength will double with every cloud you reach. The more clouds you have, the greater the difference in strength between you and the Zodiac Guardian. Chi Yu didn't notice the problem in Zagru's words. He said excitedly, "Then if I cultivate to the 9 clouds realm, won't I be invincible?" Zagru looked at him and said, "No need for the 9 clouds. You are Kiran of the 4 auspicious clouds. As long as your strength reaches the 6 clouds, even if the Zodiac Guardian reaches the 9 clouds, they can't be compared to you. The 4 auspicious clouds Kiran of the 6 clouds Zodiac Guardian can almost be compared to 2 or 3 9 clouds Zodiac Guardian. However, since the beginning of the Zodiac Guardian, there's only been 1 9 clouds Zodiac Guardian in history." Chi Yu exclaimed in admiration, "No wonder you said, I am the king of the Zodiac. My name Kiran is indeed not for nothing. All right, just tell me how to cultivate. In order to become a superhuman, I will also work hard. Zagru said, someone will naturally tell you the cultivation method. My mission is completed. You must leave here immediately. I also want to continue meditating. As for what you need to do in the future, you will naturally know. That's it. What do you want to tell me? Is it that simple? What should I do after leaving here? Chiyu looked at Zagru with some astonishment. Zagru smiled slightly, and his eyes revealed a merciful light. Chiyu, you must remember, whether it is Kirin or the Zodiac Guardian, you must comprehend the mysteries of your ability by yourself. Only the things that you comprehend by yourself can be deeply imprinted in your soul. In any cultivation, comprehension is extremely important. Believe in yourself. As long as you are willing to work hard, you will gradually understand everything. You and I, as Heaven's Guide and Kirin, are fated friends and can also be said to be partners. After leaving here, you will return to the world that belongs to you. As the saying goes, the greatest seclusion is in the city. The world that belongs to you is the best place for you to cultivate. Only in the world that belongs to you will you be able to find those fated companions. Before you leave, let me tell you a story. Chiyu looked at Zagru, and his heart was suddenly touched. Although Zagru did not seem to be older than him, in his eyes, Zagru was like a kind elder brother. The two of them did not know each other for a long time, but everything that Zagru did seemed to be for his sake. This kind of fatherly and brotherly feeling, for an orphan like Chiyu, was the first time in his life that he had felt this way. Tell me. Chiyu sat up straight and listened quietly, which was rare for him. The light in Zagru's eyes became gentle, and he said calmly, "There is a man who married 4 wives." Chiyu was stunned and said, "Isn't he committing the crime of bigamy?" Zagru looked at him, and Chiyu suddenly felt guilty when their eyes met. He was like a child who had made a mistake. You tell me, I won't interrupt." Zagru smiled and continued. The 4th wife was the one he loved the most. No matter where he went, he took her with him. Every day she bathed, changed, ate, and lived. All of it was taken care of by her husband. Whatever she wanted to eat, what she liked to wear, he did his best to satisfy her. He cared for her in every possible way and doted on her. At this point, both Zagru and Chiyu had become part of the story. The 3rd wife was the object of many people's pursuit. He went through untold hardships and defeated everyone to get her. Therefore, he cared about her every day, often whispered sweet nothings to her, and built a beautiful house for her to live in. The 2nd wife was the closest to him. Whenever he had something on his mind or was troubled, he would always come to the 2nd wife to share his worries and comfort each other. As long as he was with her, he felt very satisfied, and when he was apart, he would miss her. As for his 1st wife, he seemed to have almost forgotten about her and rarely visited her. But she was like a little girl, handling all the heavy work in the house. She had all kinds of responsibilities and worries, but he didn't pay attention to her. One day, he had to leave his hometown and go to a faraway place, never to come back. He said to the 4th wife, "I have something to do now. Will you come with me?" The 4th wife replied, "I don't want to go with you." He was very surprised and asked, "I love you the most, and I listen to everything you say. We have never been apart. Why don't you want to go with me now?" "No matter what you say, I will not go with you," the 4th wife said firmly. He hated her heartlessness, so he called the 3rd wife and asked, "Will you go with me?" The 3rd wife replied, "If even the 4th wife, whom you love the most, doesn't want to go with you, why should I?" He called the 2nd wife and asked, "Will you go with me?" The 2nd wife said, "Yes, I am sorry to see you go, but I can only go with you to the outside of the city, and you must go on your own." He didn't expect that the 2nd wife would also not go with him, so he thought of the 1st wife and asked her the same question. The 1st wife replied, "No matter where you go, no matter pain or happiness, no matter life or death, I will not leave your side. No matter where you go, I will go with you." Then he realized that the only one who could really never be separated from him was the 1st wife. The place he was going to was the world of death. The 4th wife was the body of man. Man cherished his own body and did as much to satisfy the material desires of this body as he did to the 4th wife. But the body, which you were willing to die for, would not go with you. The third wife was the wealth of the world. No matter how hard you worked to obtain it, or how much you saved up, when you died, you could not take a single cent with you. The second wife was the wife, relatives, and friends. People living in this world should love and care for each other. But people often forget the purpose of being human because of favors. The wife, relatives, and friends could only send you to the graveyard outside of the city after you died. When you came back, you would be sad for a while, and then they would go about their own lives and forget about you. After 100 years, no one would know each other. The first wife is the heart of man. It is always with us, in life and in death. It is so closely related to us, but it is also the easiest for us to ignore it. Instead, we focus on the illusory bodies of material and desire. We are intoxicated with ourselves, with family and money, but we do not know that the most important thing is our heart and soul. Only it is with us forever. It was a simple story, and Zagru finished it very quickly in a calm tone. He looked at Chiyu with a gentle gaze and said, "Do you understand?" The reason why he chose this story was because he understood Chiyu's character very well. The mention of 4 wives might leave a deeper impression on him. Chiyu nodded and then shook his head. "I don't know if I understand it or not. I know what you want to say. You want to tell me that cultivation must first cultivate the heart and not let everything in the outside world affect my heart. But I know what kind of person I am, and I also know that what you said is right. Frankly speaking, I can't do it. At least, I can't do it now. I can only say that everything I do from now on, I will do it with a clear conscience." Zagru smiled and said, "I never want you to do anything deliberately. All right, just remember the words have a clear conscience. In fact, this is also a way to cultivate the heart. I have said what I wanted to say. Let me introduce you to someone. For a long time in the future, she will be by your side, answering some of the questions in your heart and guiding you in your cultivation." Chiyu smiled almost subconsciously and said, "You are not going to give me a great beauty, are you? This is not your style." Zagru smiled and did not say anything. At this time, the door opened. A person walked in from outside. Seeing this person, Chiyu's mouth opened so wide that a large egg could be stuffed in. "What the F asterisk CK? So, I'm really auspicious. You can even say that?" Chapter 6. She was about 1.7 meters tall and had a head of soft, short hair. Her simple parting made her look full of vigor. Her beautiful big eyes seemed to be able to speak as she looked curiously at Chiyu. Her skin was white and her beauty was exquisite. Every movement she made exuded an air of elegance. The combination of nobility and liveliness was perfectly reflected on this girl, who looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. Chiyu always looked at women from the bottom up. However, when he saw this girl, he couldn't help but look at her delicate face a few more times. Then, he looked at her body out of habit. Her figure was the perfect golden ratio. Although they were both wearing jeans, she looked so beautiful when she wore them. Her slender thighs and delicate buttocks outlined the perfect curve. The corners of the trousers were slightly wider, which was the popular mini bell mouth. She wore a white long-sleeve t-shirt with a large collar, revealing the snow-white skin below her collarbone. Although the fullness in front of her chest could not be said to be hot, it was considered to be slender and moderate. Chiyu secretly compared Shuei to this girl in front of him. He couldn't think of who was more beautiful. The girl in front of him was more delicate, while Shuei was more gentle and holy. In Chiyu's heart, he had already subconsciously classified them as the best. As a gangster, Chiyu had a very detailed classification of beauties. From low to high, they were divided into terror grade, dinosaur grade, fear grade, attention grade, eye grade, desire grade, impulse grade, exclamation grade, and perfect grade. There were a total of 9 grades. Although the classification was detailed, it was actually based on Chiyu's own evaluation. There was no accurate standard. The meaning of terror grade was very simple. It was to see someone who didn't even have the strength to run and fainted. This was the terror grade. There was once a legendary sister named Furong. She should have belonged to the dinosaur grade, but her narcissism could definitely make Chiyu faint. Therefore, she was directly classified into the terror grade. The dinosaur grade, on the other hand, was the type that made people want to run away. At least they still had the strength to run. The fear grade was slightly better. When he met someone of this grade, Chi-Yu would definitely restrain his lecherous gaze. He was afraid that the other party would misunderstand him, hence the fear grade. As for attention-level beauties, they belonged to those who could be looked at normally. At the very least, they wouldn't make him feel uncomfortable. From Chi-Yu's aesthetic point of view, he liked beauties that were pleasing to the eye, desiring, and impulsive. Those that were pleasing to the eye naturally had something special about them, and those that could arouse desire naturally had a good figure. When it came to the impulsive level, they were considered 1 in 100 beauties. For example, Nana, who had kicked Chi-Yu away, was actually in the middle of the 2 grades of eye pleasing and desire. When he first saw Shu-Yu, Chi-Yu directly classified her into the impulse grade. However, after feeling the pure heart of Shu-Yu's angel in white, he classified a woman into the regret grade for the first time. As the saying went, regret grade was the absolute best of beauties. When it came to beauties of this grade, Chi-Yu didn't have any thoughts. After all, although he was a hooligan and a scoundrel, he still had self-awareness. He wouldn't think too much about an encounter that was impossible to happen, so as to avoid causing trouble for himself. For a beauty like Shu-Yu, whether it was family background, appearance, or character, she was 1 in a million. Why would she look at him? And this girl who appeared in front of him could make Chi-Yu instantly enter the regret grade. This was enough to prove how much shock she brought to Chi-Yu. As for the highest perfect grade, in Chi-Yu's heart, it was just an empty title. How could there be a woman who was perfect? Putting up such a grade was just some of Chi-Yu's vanity playing tricks on him. Fortunately, after listening to Zagru's story, Chi-Yu's state of mind had changed. Otherwise, when he saw a beauty of this grade, his eyes would definitely be filled with lust. Even so, his gaze that looked up from below still made the face of the beauty who came in blush slightly. The beauty directly walked in front of Zagru and said respectfully, "Great master." Zagru smiled slightly and said, "Let me introduce you. This is Chi-Yu who inherited Kirin's bloodline. Chi-Yu, this is one of the 3 Zodiac guardian god warriors that I found, Ji Ming. Ji Ming? This name is really unique. Great master, do you mean that she will help me cultivate in the future?" Zagru smiled and nodded. Chi was very excited. He was so excited that he wanted to hug the young monk in front of him tightly. In order to leave a good impression on the beauty, he directly raised Zagru to the level of great master. But after thinking about it, in order not to let the beauty beside him misunderstand, he just held Zagru's hand tightly and said sincerely, "Great master, don't worry. I will definitely cultivate hard. Miss Ming, nice to meet you. I'm Chi-Yu, 19 this year, unmarried, and don't have a girlfriend." After all, he was Kirin now, and he was also the king of the Zodiac. It seemed that it was not impossible for a beauty to covet him a little. Zagru said, Ming's zodiac sign is the chicken, so she is the Zodiac guardian god of the chicken zodiac. In the future, you two will take care of each other. Chi nodded firmly. I will. I definitely will. Miss Ji Ming, don't worry. In the future, when you crow, I will bring you hot water to moisten your throat. If I don't cultivate well, feel free to spur me on. I can bear it. Let the storm come more fiercely. Ji Ming looked at the ordinary-looking, tall young man in front of her. Although her face did not change, she had mixed feelings in her heart. She gently nodded and said, Hello, Mr. Chi-Yu. But my name does not mean crow, it means tomorrow's Ming. Chi-Yu chuckled and seized the opportunity to say, Then I'll call you Ming from now on. Ji Ming's face changed slightly, but she did not respond. Chi put on a thoughtful look and said, Oh, you don't seem to like me calling you that. Just when Ji Ming thought that he was still sensible, he added, Then I will call you Chick. Although the Yin Huang characters were broad and profound, sometimes, when some words were connected together, it was easy to be ambiguous. For example, the word chick could be said to describe an animal, but if you added a ba, it would probably be used to describe some kind of organ. Ji Ming was about to lose her temper, but feeling Zagre's gentle gaze, she finally restrained herself and said unhappily, Just call me Ming. Chiyu smiled and said, Ming Ming, and this name is really nice. Don't worry, I will take good care of you. Zagru said, Chiyu, please go out for a while. I have a few words to tell Miss Ming Ming alone. Chiyu was stunned for a moment. Seeing Zagru's gaze, he could only nod and smiled at Ming Ming, saying, Miss Ming Ming, then I will wait for you outside. At the thought that he would be with such a beauty for a long time in the future, and that she would be his subordinate, Chiyu was overjoyed. As soon as Chiyu walked out of the room, Ji Ming Ming could not wait and said, Master, are you sure that this person is the one with Kiran's bloodline that we have been looking for? He does not look like it. As the inheritor of Kiran's bloodline, he should have the ability to command all of our Zodiac guardians and have outstanding charisma. You must know that once Kiran appears, the guardians will be loyal. With Kiran's status, he can summon all the guardians in the East. But a person like him, Zagru sighed lightly and said, Actually, I have the same feeling as you, but as a heavenly guide, my feeling will not be wrong. He is the only one with Kiran's bloodline in this generation. The bloodline will never be fake. As the inheritor of Kiran clan, perhaps he is an anomaly. In history, there has never been a person with Kiran's bloodline like him. Now, even I can't see through him, but I can feel that his heart is not what it looks like on the surface. As for how far he can go and what kind of person he is, it will depend on you. With good guidance, I believe that he will change. I have always believed in the saying that humans are good by nature. Ji Ming Ming was somewhat silent. As a proud daughter of the heavens, any one of the people she came into contact with would be 100 times, no, 1,000 times better than Chiyu. She was about to be together with such a person and live with him forever. Although it was just a partnership, she was still very unwilling. Zagru saw through Ming Ming's worries and said seriously, As a Zodiac guardian, you must have the determination to give everything for your mission. Ming Ming, you must remember this point. No matter how bad he is still the possessor of Kiran's bloodline. Without him, perhaps I will not be able to find all the Zodiac guardians in my life. Kiran's bloodline has an invisible summoning power. After his bloodline awakens, all the Zodiac guardians will naturally gather in his direction. Therefore, your mission is to protect him and help him. Whether or not he can improve his strength is secondary. Qilin represents auspiciousness, and what he gives to the Zodiac guardian is guidance. Therefore, no matter what the situation is, you must ensure his safety. When all the Zodiac guardians are gathered, come to me together. I will teach Chiyu the ability to activate the Zodiac. Ji Ming Ming nodded silently and said, I understand, Grandmaster. You can rest assured. Since the day I became a Zodiac guardian, I am no longer an ordinary girl. I will not let my personal feelings affect my mission. Zagru smiled and said, You are a sensible child. As one of the 4 auspicious clouds, Kiran, you may not have any strength in this life. Among the Zodiac guardians in the past, the strongest Kiran had only reached the 4 auspicious clouds, barely comparable to a Zodiac guardian. That was when he was one of the auspicious clouds, Kiran. Every time Kiran increases his strength by 1 auspicious cloud, his strength will double. However, the effort he has to put in is several times more than an ordinary Zodiac guardian. As one of the 4 auspicious clouds, Kiran, the difficulty of his cultivation will increase exponentially. I am afraid that he will not be able to reach the Chuyan realm in this life. Not only must you protect him, you must also encourage him. I have given him the Sarira bead. Coupled with Ink Kiran's healing ability, I think that as long as his identity is not exposed, he should be able to complete the mission of gathering all the Zodiac guardians. At the same time, when you and him arrive in the capital, immediately contact Dragon. With Dragon around, I will feel more at ease. I think that no matter which Zodiac guardian appears in the future, there will not be anyone more outstanding than Dragon. After all, Dragon has always been the leader of the Zodiac guardians, and our generation's Dragon is a true genius. When she heard the word Dragon, Ming Ming couldn't help but smile. She nodded and said, That's right. I will look for Dragon as soon as I return to the capital. Don't worry. Do you have any other instructions? Zaglu shook his head and said, You've already been here for 3 years. Besides going back for the new year, you've always been cultivating painstakingly. Coupled with your foundation, you can already be considered to be a qualified Zodiac guardian god. As for Kieran, I've already told you everything you need to know. You just need to do as I say. You still have to teach him the ascending Qilin technique. Although there is no possibility of him successfully cultivating it, the world is unpredictable. Perhaps he can really comprehend some of the abilities. Even if only one of the abilities reaches the Chuyin level, it will still be helpful to him. When Ji Mingming thought about how she was about to be with someone like Qi Yu, she couldn't help but frown. She nodded lightly and said, "Then I'll be leaving. Take care." Zagru smiled, put his palms together, and chanted Ba. Qi Yu was very bored staying in the courtyard alone. At this moment, all he could see was Ji Mingming's shadow. Beauties met beauties again. He didn't expect that he would actually meet two amazing beauties on this trip to Tibet. He even became the king of the Zodiac Guardians, Kieran. Life was really beautiful, and the world was really wonderful. It seemed that he would no longer be a simple hooligan in the future. At the very least, he would be a hooligan with taste. At this moment, Ji Mingming had already pushed open the door and walked out. Zagru walked out with her. Qi Yu said, "Can I go now?" Zagru nodded and handed a small bag to Qi Yu. He said, "This is the bag you always carry with you. I put it away for you. There should be something you need in it. Take it well." Only then did Qi Yu remember that when he got out of the Lincoln, he had left the bag in the car and didn't take it with him. After all, the money that Vol had given him was in it. That was all he had. This was the most money that Qi Yu had brought with him in his entire life. He hurriedly took the bag and said, "Then we're leaving?" Zagru nodded. "Then we're really leaving." Qi Yu winked at Zagru. Zagru was stunned and said, "Is there anything else?" Qi Yu smiled bitterly and said, "I thought you would drive us to the station. I originally wanted to sit in your Lincoln Navigator again." Zagru smiled slightly and said, "Don't worry. When you were bathing just now, I'd already asked someone to prepare a car. Naturally, there will be a car to send you. Go, remember what I said. People need to cultivate their hearts. Cultivating their hearts is more important than cultivating their bodies. We will meet again. I hope that it won't be too long." Qi Yu didn't quite understand the last words, but at this time, Ji Mingming had already taken the lead to say goodbye to Zagru and walked out of the temple. He didn't want the beauty to wait any longer, so he hurriedly waved at Zagru and chased after Ji Mingming. Looking at their backs as they left, Zaglu's gaze became even gentler. Ba, I hope that their paths will be smoother. Did you really believe in the words that the heavens bestowed upon them? The worst character, the best luck. Even so, I hope that your luck can be brought to your Zodiac companions. When Qi Yu caught up with Ji Mingming already had a small leather suitcase in her hand. It seemed that she didn't have much luggage. When they arrived outside the temple, just as Zagru had said, there was already an off-road vehicle waiting for them. In Tibet, because the roads in many places were very bumpy, most people used off-road vehicles to travel. Although the off-road vehicle in front of them was far inferior to the original Lincoln Navigator, it was also a good Grand Cherokee. Ji Mingming put her suitcase in the trunk of the car, ignored Qi Yu, and directly stepped on the front seat of the car. Because there was a special driver in front, she ran to the front and sat down. Obviously, she didn't want to sit with Qi Yu. Although she had only seen Qi Yu for a short half an hour, Ji Mingming didn't have a good impression of him, even if he was Kieran. However, his wretched eyes and hateful words gave Ji Mingming a very bad impression at the first meeting. Qi Yu didn't care. He sat in the wide back seat alone, directly put his legs on the seat, closed the door, and leaned against it. Ji Mingming signaled the driver to drive. She saw Qi Yu's lazy look from the rearview mirror, and she couldn't help but frown. "Can you sit properly?" "Qi Yu, why should I sit properly? Haven't you heard of that old saying? There's nothing more delicious than dumplings, and nothing more comfortable than lying down. Since you can lie down, why sit?" As he spoke, he took out his cigarette that was already dry like slag from his pocket. Although he couldn't use a lighter, there was a cigarette lighter in the car. When Ji Mingming smelled the cigarette, Qi was already comfortably smoking in the back seat. You actually smoke?" Ji Mingming's dislike for Qi Yu increased. She quickly opened the window, but her action was still a little slow, and she couldn't help but cough. Chiyu smiled and said, "Driver, do you want to have one? Although it's not a good cigarette, I don't think you can buy it in Tibet. What's wrong with smoking? How many men don't smoke?" Ji Ming said with a cold face, "It seems that you are very good at these bad habits. Tobacco is a slow poison. Don't you know that?" Chiyu snorted disdainfully. "Humph! What's slow poison? My former brother, the smoker, once said that a man who doesn't smoke or drink is not as good as a dog. I think this is very true. Of course, cultivators like Master Zagru are excluded. I mean, ordinary people." The driver was a Tibetan, not a monk. After hearing Chiyu's words, he really wanted a cigarette to smoke, but with Ming Ming beside him, he had to give up. Even so, he couldn't help but ask, "Little brother, why do you say that?" Ji Ming said angrily, "Don't listen to his nonsense. It must be some nonsense." Chiyu smoked and said, "Nonsense? This is the truth of life. If you don't want to listen, then forget it. I'll tell it to the driver. It's indeed hard for you women to give birth, but it will only be hard for a while. But we men have to work hard for the rest of our lives. In an ordinary family, men are the backbone and the main source of income for the family. Although men and women are equal, how many men don't work and how many women don't work? In order to support their families, men have to keep fighting, and the pressure they bear is far beyond that of women. Men have always been the symbol of strength. They can't cry to vent the pressure in their hearts like you women do. They can only bear it alone. Even a fool knows that smoking and drinking are not good for the body, but this is the only way for men to adjust their psychology and relieve their stress. If a man really doesn't choose these two ways to relieve his stress, how tired would his life be? Wouldn't he be worse than a dog? Am I wrong?" Ji Ming was stunned. Although Chi Yu's words sounded like nonsense on the surface, it did make some sense when she thought about it. Wasn't it like this in her own family? Her father was the head of the family, and he was under pressure from all sides. Although he usually didn't say it, it could be felt from the increasing white hair on his head how heavy the pressure was. "Little brother, you're right. Can you give me one of your cigarettes? We men are born to work hard. How many of us can be born with a silver spoon in our mouths? For our wives and children, we can only keep working hard. Those men who look good on the surface, as long as they achieve success through their own hard work, which one of them doesn't pay more than ordinary people?" Ji Ming looked at the two men who were smoking openly and couldn't help but be speechless. At this time, she couldn't stop them from poisoning themselves. Chiyu said with a smile, "Brother driver, your St. Buddha temple is really rich. You have a Lincoln and a Cherokee." The driver smiled and said, "Little brother, you are wrong. St. Buddha temple is absolutely a sacred existence in Tibet. The cars you see are actually gifts from the government, not bought by the temple itself. As a national tourist destination, the annual tourism income here is very high. However, Master Zhu donated all the income from the trip to Tibet to build schools and fund the outposts guarded by the soldiers, leaving only a small amount of money for the internal expenses of the temple. The master is a person we respect. His simple life is almost unimaginable to ordinary people." The car drove fast on the highway. 2 hours later, they finally entered the downtown area of Lhasa. After more than a month, when Chiyu returned here again and saw the magnificent golden building of Patala Palace again, his mood was completely different. Ming, how are we going to the capital? Let's take the train." Ji Ming shook her head and said, "The train is too slow. We'll go back by plane. When we get to the capital, there are still many things to arrange." "Plane? I haven't done it in my life. I think it's better to take the train. The plane is too expensive." As he spoke, Chiyu subconsciously touched his bag. Ji Ming glanced at him and said, "The people of St. Buddha Temple can take any flight at any time. The ticket is free." Chiyu's eyes lit up and he said, "That's different. I can also try the feeling of taking a plane. It must feel great to soar in the blue sky." As he spoke, he couldn't help but snap his fingers subconsciously. Something strange happened. A small flame appeared on his thumb without warning. The flame was red, and it immediately scared Chiyu. "Wow, why is my hand on fire?" He quickly patted it with his hand and extinguished the flame. What made him even more strange was that the flame seemed to have no temperature. He didn't feel any burning. Ji Mingming gave Qiyu a look. Qiyu looked at the driver in the front and could only suppress the doubt in his heart and not ask. Soon, the driver sent them to the airport. Qiyu generously gave half of his remaining cigarettes to the driver and then walked into the airport with Ji Mingming. Mingming, what happened just now? Can you tell me now? Without the driver by his side, Qiyu couldn't wait to ask. Ji Mingming whispered, that should be your Kirin's awakening skill. You're a Kirin of the Four Auspicious Clouds, also known as Kirin of the Four Auspicious Clouds. Fire is one of your abilities. However, your thundercloud force is too weak now, so you can only release a small flame. Only through continuous training and when you reach the initial cloud realm can you release enough attack power. Then why can't I feel the heat? Because that is your own Kirin true fire. Of course you can't feel it. Kirin's true fire is much hotter than ordinary flames. Be careful in the future and don't cause a fire. Also, try not to use our Zodiac Guardian's ability in front of ordinary people as much as possible. It will bring unnecessary trouble. You must remember this. Now that your Kirin bloodline has just awakened, you need to rely on your own understanding to gradually adapt to the awakening skill. I think not only fire, but also thunder, wind, and water abilities should also be available to you. When we reach the capital, I will teach you the ascending Qilin method, and you should be able to use it. Although he could only create a small flame, it still made Qiyu excited. When he thought about his superpower, he couldn't help but smile. He subconsciously snapped his fingers and a small flame appeared. Qiyu shook his hand, and the flame was naturally extinguished. Ji Mingming looked at his arrogant look and couldn't help but shake her head helplessly. She went straight to the VIP waiting hall. There were many passengers in Lhasa Airport. Most of them were traveling or working in Tibet. Ji Mingming quickly finished the formalities in the VIP waiting hall. They were going to take the flight from Lhasa to the capital of the Yinhuang Republic in an hour. Sitting on the comfortable sofa in the waiting hall, Qiyu was happy. A faint fragrance constantly came from Mingming's body, which made him feel like he was in the clouds. The hormones in his body were secreted quickly, and the desire in his heart was stirring. His eyes kept wandering on Ji Mingming's body, and he secretly sighed in his heart. It would be better if his Kirin ability had X-ray vision. Mingming, how old are you this year? Is your home also in the capital? Qiyu asked with a flattering smile. Qiyu's gaze really made Mingming a little unbearable. She moved her body to the side and said, I just turned 18 years old. My home is indeed in the capital. Oh, then we are from the same hometown. It seems that our fate is really not shallow. Mingming, can you give me your mobile phone? My mobile phone has been out of battery for a long time without a charger. Although Ji Mingming was unwilling, when she thought that she still had to work with this guy in the future, the relationship should not be too stiff. She reluctantly took out a small white mobile phone from her pocket and handed it to Qiyu. Naturally, Qiyu would not let go of such a good opportunity. When he took the mobile phone, his fingers deliberately touched Mingming's slender fingers. Ji Mingming quickly withdrew her hand as if she had been electrocuted. She glared at him fiercely and turned her head away. Qiyu held the mobile phone and dialed a number with satisfaction. He had stayed in St. Buddha Temple for more than a month, which was equivalent to being missing for more than a month. Seeing that he was going back, he naturally had to contact his good brother first. Vol, it's me. As soon as the phone was connected, Qiyu couldn't wait to say, Boss, you finally called me. Hey, whose phone number is this? Vol received Qiyu's call and was very surprised. Qiyu, it's a friend of mine. How is the situation on your side? What about Yin Xiaoi? Chapter 7. Qiyu snorted and said, It seems that the lesson I gave him was not enough. I will teach him a lesson when I go back. A man with nothing to lose is not afraid of someone with shoes. Do you think I am afraid of him? I will go back today. What? You're coming back today? Vol said uneasily, but Qiyu said, Okay, there is nothing to do. Let's talk about it when I go back. Don't worry, even if I can't beat him, I will hide. Vol smiled bitterly and said, Well, boss, I will hold a dinner for you when you come back. I'm afraid that we will have less time to get together in the future. This time, my dad is very angry, and he has already arranged a school for me. I heard that it is a private high school. In August, I may go to the school to report. Chiyu was stunned for a moment, and he couldn't help but feel a little reluctant. Over the years, he had followed many bosses and accepted many underlings, but Vol was the only one who could really be regarded as a brother. It's okay. Anyway, you will not leave the capital. We will get together sooner or later. Going to school is a good thing. Don't learn from me. Your family is good, and you will achieve something. Okay, I'm hanging up. Vol listened to the beeping sound from the phone, and his chubby face couldn't help but show a bitter smile. He turned his head to look at the pile of models on his table, shook his head helplessly, and put all his energy into assembling the models. Although his hands were fat, they became very dexterous when assembling these models. Chi was about to return the phone to Ji Ming Ming, but he saw that she was wiping her hands with a disinfectant wipe, and the place she wiped was the place that he had touched before. Perhaps because the news brought by Vol made him a little upset, this time he surprisingly didn't want to take advantage of her. He put the phone beside Ji Ming Ming, sat there quietly, and didn't say anything. It wasn't until he got on the plane that Chi Yu's mood recovered because of the novelty in front of him. The status of the Saint Buddha temple in Tibet was indeed extraordinary. Not only did they not need to buy plane tickets, but they were also first class. The spacious seats made the distance between Chi Yu and Ming Ming quite a distance. However, Chi Yu's gaze had already changed its target. Any flight attendant in the first-class cabin was a beauty who was at least at the desired level. His eyes were naturally big enough to eat ice cream. The service of the air stewardesses was absolutely first class. Although they felt that this customer's gaze was a little strange, they could only smile and serve. Accompanied by a loud rumble, the plane finally took off. The moment the plane took off, Chi Yu jumped in fright from the intense pushing force. He nervously grabbed his seatbelt with both hands as his face turned deathly pale. At this moment, he suddenly thought of a very important problem. He had acrophobia, and it was a very serious one at that. Ji Ming Ming's mentality also changed at this time. When Chi Yu kept staring at her, she had an indescribable disgust in her heart. Now that Chi Yu's gaze turned to the air stewardesses, she felt a little disappointed. After all, for a beauty, not receiving attention was far more uncomfortable than receiving attention. It was like a man and a woman staying alone in a room for a night. If the man took the opportunity to do anything improper, the woman would at most scold him as a beast. However, if the man didn't do anything, he would probably be scolded as worse than a beast. Therefore, when Chi Yu's gaze was no longer on Ji Ming Ming, her gaze instead fell on Chi Yu. If one put aside their subjective understanding of Chi Yu, his appearance was not too bad. Although he was not handsome, his appearance was definitely not annoying. Coupled with a relatively tall figure and a bad smile, he was also somewhat attractive. The plane started. Just when Ji Ming Ming was about to stop looking at him and sleep for a while, she suddenly noticed that Chi Yu's expression suddenly changed. He tightly grabbed his seatbelt for some unknown reason. The fear on his face was obviously not faked. As the plane began to tilt and climb into the air, this situation became more and more obvious. Large drops of sweat fell from his forehead, and even his body began to tremble. An air stewardess noticed Chi Yu's expression and hurriedly walked to his side and asked softly, "Sir, what's wrong? Do you feel any discomfort anywhere?" In front of a beautiful woman, Chi Yu still forced a smile and said, "It's nothing. I'm a little afraid of heights. Maybe I'll be fine in a while." Although he said so, in his heart, he was thinking that the plane was flying so high. What if it fell? As he thought about it, the fear in his heart became stronger. This might be the feeling that all people who suffered from acrophobia felt. Ji Ming Ming heard Chi Yu's words clearly and almost laughed out loud. She never thought that this guy who always had a bad smile would have acrophobia. Looking at Chi Yu's fear, she couldn't help but feel a trace of pleasure in her heart. However, after all, she was one of the Zodiac guardian gods. The kindness in her heart still made her feel a little compassion. She took off her seatbelt and walked toward Chiyu. "Miss, would you please take a seat? It's still in the ascending stage, so it's more dangerous." A air stewardess reminded her carefully. Ji Ming smiled and said, "It's okay. My friend is a little uncomfortable. I'll take a look at him." She sat down next to Chiyu. The seats in the first-class cabin were very spacious and could accommodate 2 people. Originally, there was a first-class seat next to Chiyu, but at the beginning, she was afraid of being harassed by Chiyu again, so she sat in another seat. After all, there were very few passengers in the first-class cabin. Most of the seats were empty, and the flight attendants would not care about her. As soon as Chiyu saw Ji Ming, it was like a drowning man seeing a piece of driftwood. Without any hesitation, he put his arms around her waist. His movements were surprisingly fast, and he made his move just at the moment when Ji Ming sat down. Before Ji Ming could react, she had been held tightly by a pair of warm and trembling arms. "You?" For a moment, Ji Ming's heart was filled with shame and anger. Just as she was about to break free, she heard Chiyu say, Ming, let me hug you. I'm so sad." A feeling that she had never felt before instantly entered Ji Ming's heart. Ever since she was young, she had never been hugged by a man who was not her relative. A strong masculine scent instantly filled her senses. There was a strange energy wave on Chiyu's body, and this energy wave gave Ji Ming an unusual feeling of intimacy. Although she knew it was inappropriate, she did not push Chiyu away. The intimate energy wave became more and more intense, as if there was a burning sensation constantly being transmitted into Ji Ming's body. Under the effect of this energy wave, the ascending cloud technique that she was cultivating was actually in a boiling state. Ever since Chiyu hugged her, his body had stopped trembling, and his breathing had become much steadier. His eyes were closed, and his face was pale as he remained motionless. Ji Ming's ascending cloud technique had already reached the 3rd cloud stage, but it had also reached a huge bottleneck. If she could break through this bottleneck, then her strength would greatly increase. However, it was extremely difficult to break through this bottleneck. This was also one of the reasons why Zagru had asked her to leave with Chiyu. Breaking through the bottleneck of cultivation was not something that could be achieved with just hard work. At the same time, it also required understanding and luck. However, at this moment, Ji Ming could clearly feel that the bottleneck that was preventing her from improving had actually loosened slightly. Ji Ming had also heard from Zagru that Kirin was of great help to the Zodiac guardian god. However, she did not expect that just physical contact, and Chiyu had just woken up, the energy in his body would have such a huge impact on her. At this moment, whether it was to comfort Chiyu's acrophobia or out of consideration for the feeling of breaking through the bottleneck, she could not leave Chiyu's embrace. At this moment, Chiyu had a different feeling. The faint fragrance on Ming's body calmed his heart a lot, and the relic bead on his wrist exuded a peaceful aura, stabilizing his mind. An inexplicable energy continuously flowed from Ji Ming's body into his body. The cool air spread all over his body, and it was indescribably comfortable. Hugging that elastic and graceful body, he actually fell asleep with his mind at ease. At this moment, neither Ji Ming nor Chiyu noticed that the Kirin pattern on Chiyu's body had appeared again. The energy fluctuation that Ji Ming felt came from this. Chiyu slept peacefully, while Ji Ming felt the energy fluctuation on Chiyu's body while adjusting her ascending cloud skill. Although the posture was not very elegant, her attention was not on it, so she did not feel too embarrassed. The flight time from Tibet to the capital was more than 2 hours. In this situation, time passed very quickly. When Chiyu woke up, because of the weightlessness caused by the plane landing, he could already see the familiar capital from the window of the plane. It was already night. Looking down from the sky, the brightly lit capital looked exceptionally gorgeous. "You're awake." Ji Ming's voice was obviously much gentler. In the past 2 hours, although she had not broken through her bottleneck, the improvement in her cultivation was more obvious than that of a few days of usual cultivation. Moreover, with the help of the special energy emitted by Chiyu, She clearly felt that she had understood some of the tricks to breaking through. The word awkward had never been in Chi-Yu's dictionary. The feeling of acrophobia had long disappeared. As he got closer and closer to the ground, his heart also relaxed. Although his arms were sore and numb from holding Ji Ming like this, he was unwilling to let go of the wonderful feeling. "We're almost there. Can you let go of me now?" Ji Ming said helplessly. She was already somewhat helpless against Chi-Yu's row behavior. Only then did Chi-Yu let go of his hand and sit properly. The lingering fragrance of Ji Ming's body still lingered on his arm, making him indescribably happy. Looking at Ji Ming's helpless look, he could not help but feel a little touched. This girl obviously did not have a good impression of him, but when he needed it the most, she still chose to help him instead of pushing him away. Ming, thank you." Chi was rarely serious for a moment. The trace of unhappiness before boarding the plane had disappeared without a trace. Ji Ming shook her head and said, "You're welcome. Protecting you has always been my mission. We'll be arriving soon. I came back in a hurry, so I didn't inform my family. Do you have a place to stay? We'll stay at your place for one night first. I'll go home tomorrow and arrange other things. Don't get the wrong idea. Since I just come back, I'll teach you the ascending Qilin method. One night should be enough to teach you the cultivation method." It was almost impossible for Chi-Yu not to get the wrong idea. He had just hugged a soft and fragrant jade for more than 2 hours, and the beauty in front of him had taken the initiative to stay at his place for one night. How could he not get the wrong idea? After getting off the plane, Chi-Yu generously hailed a taxi and went straight to Jingshan District, where he had lived for more than 10 years. Although he felt an indescribable heartache when he saw the constantly jumping number on the meter, his heart was filled with excitement when he thought that he could stay with a breathtaking beauty tonight. Ji Ming did not sit in the front alone this time, but sat in the back with Chi-Yu. From getting off the plane to getting on the taxi, she carefully sensed that as long as she was within 1 meter from Chi-Yu, his energy fluctuation would bring benefits to her ascending Qilin method. The closer the distance, the more obvious the impact of this energy fluctuation. Among the 3 Zodiac guardian gods that had already appeared, Ming, who had the Zodiac sign of the chicken, was the weakest one. In order to improve her strength as soon as possible, she had to suffer a little and sit with Chi-Yu. "Chi-Yu, who else do you have in your family?" Ji Ming asked casually in order to avoid Chi-Yu's gaze. Chi-Yu was stunned for a moment, and his eyes finally moved away from Ming. He said indifferently, "There's no one else in my family. I'm alone." Ji Ming was also stunned. "What about your parents? Don't they live with you?" Chi-Yu lit a cigarette, opened the window a little, and said, "Parents? God knows where they are. I've been an orphan since I was a child, and I grew up in an orphanage. Where do you think my parents are?" Ji Ming saw a trace of indifference in Chi-Yu's eyes. It was appropriate to describe him now with the words, "There is nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart." She said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were an orphan." Chi-Yu blew out a smoke ring. "It's okay. I'm used to it. It's good to have no parents, and I'm freer. At least no one cares about me. I can see that your family environment should be very good. From the first time I saw you, I knew that we weren't the same kind of people. It was Master Zagru who brought us together." Ji Ming looked at him. She suddenly felt that this man didn't seem to be that hateful. In the depths of her heart, she felt pity for him. She wasn't clear about the feelings of an orphan, but she could imagine how difficult it would be for someone who grew up without parents. He definitely didn't want to become like this. If he had the same background as her, he might be more outstanding than her. "Chi-Yu, are we friends?" Ji Ming asked softly. Chi-Yu smiled. "On the way back, you're willing to let me carry you. We're already friends. I know that you hate me, but you're still willing to help me in this situation. It's my honor to have a friend like you." Ji Ming also smiled. This was the first time she smiled at Chi-Yu. Her smile was bright and full of vitality. "Well, from now on, we're friends." Saying that, she took the initiative to extend her hand to Chi-Yu. At this moment, she didn't do it because of the benefits Chi-Yu could bring to her cultivation. She suddenly understood Zagru's words. Everyone has their good side. as long as one was good at discovering it. Qiyu wasn't a useless person. Qiyu held Ji Mingming's hand, but let out a long sigh. Ji Mingming felt strange. Why are you sighing? Don't you want me as a friend? Qiyu smiled bitterly and shook his head. Since you're already treating me as a friend, I can't treat you like before. I don't have an opportunity to flirt with a beauty. How can I not sigh? Ji Mingming giggled. You're really a ruffian. Qiyu smiled. I like this title. As the saying goes, you don't need to worry when you're in debt, and you don't need to bite lice. In any case, I already have the title of a rogue, scoundrel, and so on. Ruffian seems to be more suitable for me. I'll take it as a compliment. So what if I'm a ruffian? In the past, didn't Ruffian Kai also chase after Qing Wu Fei Yong? Ji Mingming smiled. Well, Mr. Ruffian, when we get to your place, I want to listen to your story, okay? Qiyu shook his head. What's so good about a ruffian's story? Do you want to hear the story of a ruffian's growth? Oh, that's right. Since you're coming back with me this time, will I still be living the same life as before? Ji Mingming shook her head. Of course not. I'm 18 years old this year, and it's time for me to go to university. Master Zagru said that you should go to university with me. We both need to enrich ourselves. Qiyu opened his mouth wide in surprise. No way. You want me to go to university? I haven't even graduated from junior high school. Ji Mingming smiled. Then you need to work hard. Don't you want to go? Qiyu quickly shook his head. Of course I want to go. There must be a lot of beauties in the university. How can I miss this opportunity? It took an hour for the taxi to send them to Jingshan District, where Qiyu lived. After paying the fare of more than 100 yuan, Qiyu felt an indescribable heartache. Ji Mingming looked at the decent residential area in front of her. She couldn't help being a little surprised. She smiled. It seems that your place is pretty good. Qiyu chuckled and said, I hope you can still give me such an evaluation later. 5 minutes later, Ji Mingming's face changed. The residential area was indeed good, but Qiyu lived in the basement of the residential area. Even the toilet had to be shared here. I'm staying in the one in front. There's only one room and one bed. But don't worry, I've already treated you as a friend, and I won't have any ill intentions towards you. Qiyu snickered. A man in his 30s walked over. He was half naked and only wore a pair of pants. When he saw Qiyu, he couldn't help but smile. Where have you been all this time? There have been people coming to look for you recently. Did you commit a crime? Ah, such a beautiful chick. Where did you find her? This kind of high-quality goods is not cheap. You used to pretend to be innocent and said that you had to find a virgin for your first time. What's wrong? You've changed now? Little girl, where are you from? I've changed this area, but I've never seen someone as beautiful as you. Qiyu was embarrassed. He quickly said, Brotherly, this is my friend. Her surname is Ji. Brotherly couldn't wait. Nonsense. Of course I know she's a prostitute. All right, we're brothers. I won't fight with you. You can introduce her to me after you're done. Ji Mingming's face turned red and white. Fortunately, Brotherly had gone to the public toilet before she flared up. Qiyu smiled. Actually, Brotherly is a good person. He was a businessman in his early years. Later, his business failed, and his wife and children ran away. He was left alone. He did some small business, and his only hobby was women. Ji Mingming snorted and said, Then you two are like-minded. I hope this will be the last time I come here. Qiyu opened the door and turned on the only light in the room. His room could not be described as messy. That would be an insult to the word chaos. As soon as he entered the room, a moldy smell came directly. There were scattered magazines, cigarette butts, and dirty clothes on the floor. The mixed smell was comparable to that of a biological weapon. Ji Mingming stood at the door. She gathered her courage for a long time, but she couldn't take a step in. Are you Kirin or the Zodiac Guardian? Qiyu said in surprise. Why do you ask? Ji Mingming smiled bitterly. Because your place is like a dog kennel. No, a dog kennel might be cleaner than yours. Your place should be described as a garbage dump. Have you always lived in a place like this? When Qiyu returned to his place, he felt very comfortable. He directly laid down on his only big bed. Of course I live here. The relief I get from the government is only 600 yuan a month. The rent here is 200 yuan, and the remaining 400 yuan is barely enough for me to smoke and eat. However, Sometimes there is no black food after eating the white food. Well, I'll clean up. As he spoke, he got up from the bed and began to tidy up his room. Ji Ming put her luggage aside. She found a handkerchief from somewhere and covered her mouth and nose. She also started to help him tidy up. The two of them struggled for more than half an hour. Finally, Chi-Yu's room had a place to stand. Most of the smell in the room had been released. Although it was still unpleasant, it was barely bearable. Taking off the handkerchief from her face, Ji Ming let out a long breath. Chi-Yu found 2 bags of instant noodles from somewhere. He didn't know whether they had expired or not. He boiled a pot of water and soaked them. Let's eat together. It's too late now. I'll take you to eat something else tomorrow morning. Ji Ming sat on the bed and said, Chi-Yu, you will move out with me tomorrow. Chi-Yu smiled and said, You won't ask me to live with you in your house, right? Aren't you afraid that I will be kicked out by your family? Ji Ming said snappily, Not my house. Don't worry, there must be a place for you to live. The environment here is really bad. Chi-Yu handed a bowl of noodles to Ming. We'll talk about it later. I don't care. It doesn't matter where I live. It's good to have a free place. However, I'll say it in advance. I can live here, but you don't have to give me money. I'm not living off a woman. Ji Ming rolled her eyes at him and said, You also have to have the conditions to live off a woman. Do you think this great beauty needs to find a man to live off a woman? Chi-Yu felt wronged and said, You don't have to attack me like this. Although I'm not very handsome, I can still be considered average. Ji Ming pretended to vomit. All right, stop being so cocky. I will teach you the ascending Qilin technique now. Whether you can achieve anything in the future will depend on your own hard work. Chi-Yu nodded and made a gesture of pointing to the sky with one hand. In order to become a Superman who wears underwear on the outside, I will also work hard. Ji Ming giggled and said, Can't you be more civilized with your words? Underwear on the outside, it sounds so bad. Chi-Yu smiled and said, This is my style. All right, teacher chicken, we can start. Ji Ming rolled her eyes at him. She realized that although Chi-Yu was not a good person, after establishing a friendship with him, chatting with him made her feel relaxed and happy. The cultivation method of the ascending Qilin technique is not difficult. Our entire cultivation method can be called the ascending cloud technique. Every time a cloud rises, there will be a corresponding increase in strength, and the ascending Qilin technique is specially for you. Whether it is the Zodiac guardian god or you, ruffian Kirin, when you cultivate, you must focus on the development of your own potential. Because we have inherited the bloodline from ancient times, our potential is far greater than that of ordinary people. Therefore, the best way is to constantly cultivate and turn your potential into strength. Do you understand what I'm saying? Chi-Yu nodded and said, No matter what, I also graduated from primary school. I can understand. Continue, as long as you tell me how to cultivate. I will definitely do my best. Ji Ming said seriously, Clouds are illusory, just like our strength. We cultivate our own ability, and our own ability is closely related to our own attributes. For example, I cultivate the ability of a chicken, and the chicken's ability mainly lies in its mouth, wings, claws, and voice. Therefore, the power of my ascending cloud technique is also reflected in these 4 aspects. You are Kirin, an auspicious sign from the heavens. The most important thing about Kirin's ability is the overall balance. There is no special strength, but there is no special weakness either. In ancient times, Kirin could use a special spell to subdue other strange beasts. Later on, after humans inherited the bloodline of Kirin, this spell became the method to control Kirin's ability. The spell is very simple. Perhaps you have heard of it before. It is the 9 secret words. Lin, Bing, Do, Zhe, Jie, Zhen, Lai, Qian, Xing. These 9 words are the incantations you will use in the future. The way you snap your fingers can be said to be a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Lin, Chi-Yu originally wanted to repeat the 9 syllables incantation, but the moment he uttered the first word, a small ball of flame immediately emerged from his right hand. Compared to when he had snapped his fingers, it was clearly much denser. Chi-Yu could clearly feel that as the flame burned, there seemed to be a strange thing in his body that was gradually being consumed. Although the speed of consumption was not very fast, he could clearly feel it. Ji Ming smiled and said, "See, this is the incantation that Kirin can naturally use. The thing that supports your ability is the thundercloud force. The stronger the thundercloud force, the stronger your ability, and the longer it can last. As for how to integrate it with your own ability, you'll have to rely on yourself to complete it. All right, next I will explain the cultivation method of the ascending cloud technique in detail." Chi-Yu looked at the flame in his hand and was suddenly very excited. He quickly took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it up. "Damn, save it. I don't need to buy a lighter in the future. This is really good." Ji Ming was just about to start explaining the cultivation method, but she was immediately choked by Chi-Yu's words. You actually used Kirin's ability to light a cigarette. I really admire you." Chapter 8. Ji Ming said, "You're right about that. Abilities have to be used frequently in order to become more proficient. As the thundercloud force is consumed and recovered, it's also a kind of cultivation process. However, our main cultivation is still carried out through meditation. In the process of meditation, you need to use your mind to direct the thundercloud force that you possess to help the ability in your bloodline to combine with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and then be absorbed by your body. We call this one round of cultivation one cloud cycle, also known as small cloud cycle, and every 49 cloud cycles is known as big cloud cycle. Generally speaking, when we cultivate, we have to cultivate at least one big cloud cycle to be considered a stage. The cultivation method differs from person to person. You're Kirin, and because of Kirin's bloodline, many of your hidden meridians are different from ordinary people. These meridians are known as the 8 extraordinary meridians. The thundercloud force circulates in these meridians, and the place where the thundercloud force is stored is the sea of breath acupoint on your lower abdomen and the lingtai acupoint on your back. As she spoke, she walked in front of Chi-Yu and tapped on his lower abdomen before patting his back lightly. Chi-Yu instantly felt 2 warm currents condensing at the places where Ming patted, and he quickly memorized these 2 locations. Right now, he was still in the excited stage of thirsting for power. Once he was interested, he would still be very focused. Remember these 2 places. In the process of cultivation, the lingtai is the starting point, and the sea of breath is the ending point. These are the 2 most important meridians, and the 8 extraordinary meridians that our thundercloud force circulates are different from ordinary people's understanding of meridians. Ming took out a map from her luggage and raised her hand. Suddenly, all kinds of complicated meridians, a total of 8, appeared in front of Chi-Yu. When Chi-Yu saw the densely packed meridians and their names, he immediately felt a headache. Teacher Chicken, I'm a little sleepy. Why don't we talk about it tomorrow? Isn't this a little too much? Are there any easier cultivation methods?" Ji Ming sternly said, "Of course not. You have to know that these acupuncture points are very important during cultivation. If there's even the slightest mistake, it might bring unimaginable damage to you. Therefore, the first step you have to do is to firmly memorize these acupuncture points. Not only do you have to remember their names, but you also have to remember their locations. Moreover, you have to identify the acupuncture points accurately. Only then can we begin the next step of cultivation. If you don't remember the acupuncture points, you won't be able to cultivate because the chant of the ascending Qilin technique comes from the acupuncture points. For example, if I say Qi Si light drum, Ling Tai suction, Guanzhong drainage, can you understand?" Chi-Yu smiled bitterly. "So cultivation is so troublesome. I don't know if it's worth it if I put in so much effort just to woo a girl." Ji Ming's almond-shaped eyes widened. "What did you say? Don't tell me you cultivate too." Seeing that Ming was angry, Chi-Yu hurriedly changed his words. No, of course not. I'm doing it to protect the great cause of the East." Although he said that, he was thinking in his heart that it was also to promote the cause of the unity of the beauties in various cities, and even the whole world. Ji Ming snorted. The 8 extraordinary meridians have a total of 8 meridians and more than 100 acupuncture points. I don't have high requirements for you. You just have to memorize the acupuncture points of one meridian every day. However, when you memorize another meridian tomorrow, don't forget today's meridian. I'll start guiding you in your cultivation now. You have to understand the specific names and locations of each meridian. Today is the Heel meridian. We'll start now. If you can't remember it clearly, don't even think about sleeping today. Just as Chi Yu was about to complain, Ji Ming Ming had already pointed a finger at his chest. Her hands were like blooming orchids, moving faster and faster in front and behind him. Instantly, streams of heat condensed into balls. More than 10 balls of air instantly appeared where she had pointed. Ji Ming Ming said, "You should be able to feel that the places I have pointed are warm. These are the acupuncture points that you have to memorize today. They are on your body now. Start memorizing them. I'll sleep for a while. I'll test you when I wake up." With the exact location, it saved him the trouble of identifying the acupuncture points. Memorizing a meridian was indeed not difficult. Of course, this was only what she thought. The night passed quickly. The anticipated erotic scene naturally didn't appear. However, the next morning, Chi Yu had 2 huge dark circles under his eyes. When he first started memorizing the acupuncture points, he didn't think much of it. When he saw Ming Ming sitting at the side and meditating, he dozed off while memorizing. However, Ji Ming Ming only slept for half an hour before she woke up to check. In the end, Chi Yu didn't even remember the name of one acupuncture point. One could imagine that the poor Chi Yu's memory had always been very poor. Under Ji Ming Ming's coercion, he used an entire night to finally memorize all the acupuncture points of the Heel meridian. If a person's body was continuously poked by someone's fingers at more than 10 places on his body, and he would shout out a name every time he was poked, anyone would probably be able to memorize it easily. Rubbing the sore spots on his body, Chi Yu felt as if his body was falling apart. "Ming Ming, I've memorized it now. I can sleep now, right? I can't do it anymore." Ji Ming Ming smiled and said, "How can that be? You're the Ink Kirin with an extremely strong recovery ability. Not sleeping for a night is nothing. It should be daybreak outside now, and it's time for us to leave this place. Let's go." Chi Yu's eyes widened. "No way, we're leaving now? My great aunt, please spare me. I want to sleep." Ji Ming Ming clapped her hands and said, "It doesn't matter. You can sleep, but my hands have always been itchy. If I poke your Heel meridian a few more times while you sleep, don't blame me. I surrender. Let's go. When we find a place to stay, you have to let me sleep." Ji Ming Ming pulled up her luggage and said with a smile, "All right, let's go. I'm not that unreasonable. It's because of you that I don't want to stay in this place for another minute. What's the smell here? You're always smoking. I'm going to smoke you to death." Chi Yu got up with a bitter smile and simply packed his things. He really had nothing to bring. He originally wanted to take a few magazines and old clothes, but when Ji Ming Ming smelled the smell on his clothes, she made him give up. As for what to wear in the future, Ji Ming Ming said that these old clothes were bought by her, and she would be responsible for the new clothes in the future as compensation to Chi Yu. Only then did Chi Yu follow her out of the basement, feeling relaxed. Bathing in the sunlight, Ji Ming Ming put her luggage aside and did some simple exercises. Breathing in the fresh air, she immediately felt much more comfortable. This simple action of hers had scared Chi Yu to death. If it was anyone else, if they suddenly saw a beautiful woman in front of them raise her leg high and stick the tip of her foot out of her shoulder, they would probably be frightened. Ji Ming Ming's body seemed to have no bones. Every joint was extremely soft. In her eyes, it was not big, but in Chi Yu's eyes, it was more exaggerated than an acrobat's. I don't know you. The Earth is very dangerous. Go back to Mars," Chi Yu said as he hurried to the side. Ji Ming Ming looked back at him, her beautiful eyes sparkling. "Don't be surprised. This is nothing. Do you think it's so easy to be the Zodiac guardian god? Don't worry. In the future, you have to exercise often. You always smoke, and your body is worse than your peers." Chi Yu was unconvinced as he retorted, "Who said that? There are many people my age who can beat me." Ji Ming Ming stuck out her tongue and said, "Don't disgust me. What's the point of fighting? Just when Chi Yu was about to refute, his eyes suddenly froze and his face became cold. His body naturally exuded a trace of cold aura, and he took a few steps to Ji Mingming's side. Ji Mingming was shocked by his appearance. Just when she thought he was angry, she heard Chi Yu's voice. "Get out of here quickly. Don't worry about me. These guys are coming for me." Looking back, Ji Mingming suddenly understood the reason for Chi Yu's change. More than 20 youths of 18 or 19 years old were encircling them in a semicircle. Each of them held a wooden stick in their hand. Looking at their strange expressions, it was obvious that they were up to no good. The leader was a handsome young man. The weather was very warm, but he wore a hat on his head. He looked at Chi Yu with eyes that were almost spitting fire. Ji Mingming was looking at these people when she heard Chi Yu say anxiously, "Hurry up and leave. These guys are not good people. Aren't you afraid of being raped and killed by them?" Ji Mingming laughed. "So you still have the heart of a hero to save a beauty. Master Zagru is right. You're not useless." Chi Yu said impatiently, "Nonsense. You're my friend. Do you think I will let you be implicated by me? Hurry up and leave, or it will be too late." As he said that, his eyes were already looking around for weapons that could be used. Unfortunately, the entrance of the community was very clean. Not to mention bricks, there was not even a big stone. Chi Yu's brick-breaking martial art was indeed very good. However, even if he was given a cart of bricks, he was afraid that he would not be able to do anything. There were more than 20 people in front of him, and from the looks of it, they were definitely not ordinary hooligans. Their cold eyes made Chi Yu feel a chill down his spine. "Yin Xiaoi, how did you know that I was back?" As Chi Yu said that, he strode forward. As he walked, he waved his right hand behind him, indicating for Ji Mingming to leave quickly. Yin Xiaoi looked to the side. Following his gaze, Chi Yu suddenly saw a person. It was Brotherly, who he and Ji Mingming met last night. Brotherly said with some fear, "Chi Yu, it's not that I want to do this, but they said that if I don't inform them that you are back, they will break my legs. You also know that I have nothing now. I can only run a small business, so... Chi Yu said coldly, "You are not my brother. Don't talk nonsense. When I was in trouble, you gave me food. From now on, we do not owe each other anything. Yin Xiaoi, I know that you have been looking for me. Now that I am standing here, what do you want to do?" Yin Xiaoi's eyes became fierce. "Remember what you said to me last time. Today, I will return it to you. I don't want to do anything. I just want you to know why the flowers are so red. Brothers, go and cripple this guy. If anything happens, I will take responsibility." As he said that, he raised the stick in his hand and pointed it at Chi Yu. Chi Yu's expression changed slightly. If it was any other time, he would have turned around and run. He had always been very good at escaping. However, he could not run now because he did not know if Mingming had already run far away. Since he was born, he had not had many true friends. Just yesterday, he actually had a beautiful woman as a friend. At this moment, as a man, he would definitely not retreat. After all, his body was burning with Kiran's blood. Courage had always been one of the things that he did not lack. More than 20 people moved at the same time. In a big country like the Yanhuang Republic, more than 20 people were too insignificant. However, at this moment, in front of Chi Yu, more than 20 people brought about a momentum that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas. There were continuous screams, but they did not belong to Chi Yu. For some unknown reason, when Yin Xiaoi's people started to attack, the people in front fell inexplicably and immediately dragged the people behind them down. F***CK. Is this the power of the legendary auspicious sign? It's not the new year yet, so you don't have to be so polite. Dispense with the formalities. At this moment, Chi Yu did not forget to ridicule the group of enemies in front of him. Yin Xiaoi walked past his subordinates and rushed towards Chi Yu with his stick. Since young, he had never suffered such a big loss like the last time. It could be said that he hated Chi Yu to the core. From Nana, he had already found out about Chi Yu's background. With his identity and family background, it was not too difficult for him to make a person like Chi Yu disappear from the world. At this moment, a few vans were parked not far away. As long as he defeated Chi Yu, he would immediately bring his subordinates to a different place to deal with this ruffian who had beaten him until he had a concussion. Yu had never been a sitting duck. Although he knew that he could not defeat his opponent, he was still prepared to fight with his life. Even if he could only defeat one person, it would be enough. Just as Yu was about to rush forward and fight with Yin Xiaoyi, an angelic voice suddenly sounded. "Let me do it." Who said that a hero must save a beauty? A beauty can also save a ruffian. Yu only felt a strong force on her shoulder. Her body subconsciously fell back a few steps. Her vision blurred, and a slim figure had already flown past her. Yes, it was completely like she was flying. Almost in a flash, the white figure had already arrived in front of Yin Xiaoyi. Yin Xiaoyi's attention was originally on Yu. When he suddenly saw someone rushing towards him, he immediately chopped down with his stick without hesitation. After all, he had practiced martial arts for a few years, and he still had the basic skills. There was a soft crack, but it was not the sound of bones breaking. The stick in Yin Xiaoyi's hand had already been broken into two. Then, before he could clearly see the appearance of his attacker, his nose had already intimately touched the opponent's elbow. A scream that did not sound like that of a human being rang out. Yin Xiaoyi's body was actually hit and sent flying. He fell backwards, instantly crushing the two people who came with him. The person who had rushed forward past Yu was Ji Mingming. Her movements were not fancy, and there was nothing unnecessary. She only made 2 movements against Yin Xiaoyi. She raised her left hand, blocked the stick, and leaned forward. Her right elbow had already hit Yin Xiaoyi and sent him flying. Then, Ji Mingming's body seemed to become illusory and directly cut into the group of more than 20 people. She mostly used her arms. Her arms seemed to be made of iron, and any wooden stick that came into contact with them would immediately break. Close combat was supposed to be very dangerous, but with her lightning-fast footsteps, her opponent couldn't even touch a single hair on her head. The basic sound of hands and flesh was constantly heard. When Yu realized it, the battle was completely over. Ji Mingming clapped her hands and returned to Yu's side. She smiled and said, "Okay, we can go now. Don't worry, I know how to control my strength. They only broke a few bones at most." Yu looked at Ji Mingming as if he was looking at a dinosaur. "Mingming, I was wrong. Although the Earth is very dangerous, as a Martian, you are more dangerous to the Earth." Right now, he was extremely glad that he did not offend the beauty in front of him. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would end up like these people lying on the ground. Although he had thought that Ji Mingming had a certain level of ability, he had never thought that such a delicate beauty like her would be able to easily defeat over 20 young men with just a wave of her hand. Furthermore, she seemed to be very relaxed, and there was not even a single drop of sweat on her face. If she had done the same to him when he was teasing her, then, at the thought of this, Yu couldn't help but feel a little scared and embarrassed. He couldn't accept the fact that a beauty had to help him deal with the trouble he had caused. "That mouth of yours, it was indeed too poor. Protecting you is my responsibility. Have you forgotten? Kirin, you ruffian." Mingming said the last 4 words very softly. Only Yu could hear it. Yu asked, "Is this the effect of the ascending cloud technique?" Ji Mingming smiled and said, "This is only the surface. The real ability of our Zodiac Guardian can't be revealed in front of ordinary people." Yu's eyes emitted a scorching light. "Okay, Mingming, I have decided. From today onwards, I will memorize the acupoints of 2 meridians with you every day. I will not be lazy anymore." Out of a man's pride, he did not want to lose to a woman. Ji Mingming smiled and said, "Then I will wait and see. Don't let me down." Yu nodded and walked to Yin Xiaoyi's side. At this time, Yin Xiaoyi seemed to be in a worse state than before. His nose bridge was obviously broken and his face was covered in blood. Yu pretended to be regretful and said, "You finally understand why the flowers are so red this time. Sigh, I'm too lazy to argue with people like you. Go back and complain to your father, little kid from kindergarten." After saying that, he did not look at Yin Xiaoyi and turned to leave with Ji Mingming. Yu's words made him feel worse than killing Yin Xiaoyi. His resentful eyes followed the 2 of them. When he got up from the ground, he had already made a decision in his heart. Ming Ming, where are you taking me? Do you really want me to go back to your home? Ji Ming Ming got on the taxi and gave him an address. Of course not. It is not suitable for you to go to my home. It is not convenient for you to cultivate. I will settle you down first and then go home to prepare for school. There is still about 2 months before school starts. You should take advantage of this time to practice. Do you remember that Master Zagru once told you that he found 3 Zodiac guardians? I'm just one of them. Now I'm going to take you to see the most outstanding genius of our generation of Zodiac guardians, Dragon. Ji Ming Ming's voice condensed into a line and entered Chi Yu's ears. She was not afraid that the driver in the front would hear it. Dragon? Is he very strong? Chi Yu asked curiously. Ji Ming Ming nodded without hesitation and said, Of course. Dragon is the strongest among the 12 Zodiac animals. He has many kinds of abilities and is second only to Kirin in all aspects. However, his cultivation speed is far beyond that of Kirin. Because Kirin is an auspicious sign, he can be said to be the leader of the 12 Zodiac animals. Dragon is the leader of the 12 Zodiac animals and is the strongest one. Moreover, the Zodiac dragon in our area is a genius. At the age of 23, he is already cultivated to the 5th cloud. This kind of cultivation speed is unprecedented in history. You should know that it takes at least 5 to 10 years for a Zodiac animal to break through the bottleneck from the 3rd cloud to the 4th cloud. It is already very good for some Zodiac animals to reach the 5th cloud in their entire life. The dragon of the 5th cloud is absolutely terrifying. Don't talk to Dragon like how you talk to me. Otherwise, I can't help you. Chi Yu said disapprovingly, Am I not the king of the Zodiac animals? Could it be that he can bite me? Ji Ming Ming covered her mouth and chuckled. She said, Dragon is a very old-fashioned person. He hates people like you the most. Anyway, I have reminded you that I will ask Dragon to arrange your residence and cultivation place. You better not offend Dragon. Otherwise, you will know the consequences. Dragon is not as easy to talk to as Master Zagru. The taxi followed Ji Ming Ming's instructions and drove all the way east. They passed by the most prosperous area of the capital and looked at the various strange and modern buildings around him. Chi Yu could not help but have a strange feeling in his heart. Although this trip to Tibet was not short, he only had a simple understanding of Tibet. After all, he had slept for most of the month. However, he knew that his fate had completely changed because of this trip to Tibet. Chi Yu had never brought a watch with him. After driving for about an hour, they finally arrived at their destination. There were a large number of villas in the east of the capital. This was a place where the rich gathered, especially by the warm Jade River, which was relatively close to the airport. There were many villas, and the beautiful scenery was enough to tempt the rich. However, the place that Ji Ming Ming brought Chi Yu to was not a villa. From the outside, they could not see what it looked like. They could only see a 3-meter-tall wall made of green bricks. There were also sharp iron frames on the wall, like long spears standing tall. The area of the wall was very wide, and the green wall looked a little simple and unadorned. This can't be a concentration camp, right? Chi Yu said with a smirk. Ji Ming Ming rolled her eyes at him and said, What do you think? This is the place of the dragon, and it will also be the place where you will live in the future. As they spoke, the two of them paid the bill and got out of the car, then walked toward the gate. The gate was a bit taller than the wall, and the iron branches that were as thick as a human arm looked very sturdy. Ji Ming Ming went straight to the communication system beside the door and pressed a few buttons. With a buzzing sound, the door quietly opened to both sides. Ji Ming Ming gestured to Chi Yu and took the lead to walk into the courtyard. As soon as they entered the gate, a gust of fresh air hit their faces. The first thing that Chi Yu saw was a wide lawn. It felt like a golf course. There were some scattered trees on the lawn, and the size seemed to be no smaller than a golf course. Surrounded by the green, there was a lake that was about thousands of square meters, rippling in the breeze. There was a small pavilion in the middle of the lake, which looked a little more elegant. The ground in the center led to the middle of the courtyard, where there was a huge villa. Chi Yu could only use the word huge to describe this villa. He had never seen a villa of such a grand scale. It felt like a castle without a steeple. Perhaps even a star-rated hotel might not be as big as this. It's beautiful, isn't it? Dragons have good taste, but dragons don't like flowers. So, this place is all green, and only this villa is white. There's also a large swimming pool on the top floor of the villa. Can a Zodiac guardian god be so rich? Does that mean I could take it too? Chiyu looked at the huge villa in astonishment and sighed. Of course not. These were all earned by the dragon's own struggles, not given to him by others. If you want to achieve something, you have to work hard. The two walked along the central path that was 5 meters wide toward the direction of the villa. When they were about 50 meters away from the villa, the door in the center of the villa opened, and a person walked out from inside. "Sister Long," Ji Ming shouted excitedly and ran over, leaving Chiyu behind. It was a woman who walked out of the door. Ming was not short, but she was still half a head taller. She was at least 178 meters tall. Even Chiyu, who had grown a little taller after waking up, could not help but feel ashamed when he looked at this tall woman. She wore a flawless white dress. Her long black hair was tied up on her head, and she wore a pair of black-rimmed glasses. This woman who walked out of the villa was more like a white-collar beauty. Her skin was very white, and the fullness in front of her chest was not something a young girl like Ming could compare with. The dress only reached her knees, revealing a pair of slender and round calves. From the moment she appeared, her every movement looked so elegant. The dragon was a woman? The terrifying dragon that Ming described was actually a woman? Chiyu quickly touched his nose to make sure that there was no nosebleed. Because of the black-rimmed glasses, he could not see the dragon's appearance very clearly. However, just from the outline, he could tell that she was a peerless beauty. Chiyu secretly classified this dragon beauty in his heart. This dragon beauty was definitely at the Xing level, or even a little higher. Even if she was not at the perfect level, she was not far from it.